Chapter 587. Breaking News. Breaking News. The Celestial Quartz Gold Medal Snack, Dubai's Stuffed Buns, will be on sale at a 50% discount tomorrow. 3,000 steamers of Dubai's stuffed buns will be on sale on that day, and the purchase limit will be changed so that each student can purchase 10 steamers of stuffed buns. This news spread like wildfire throughout the entire Xiaoxian United University, creating a heated discussion. My God! I haven't had the chance to eat Dubai's stuffed buns for a month. I didn't expect happiness to come so suddenly. He's selling so many steamers of stuffed buns at the same time, and it's even at a 50% discount. Will they still taste as good as before? 500 spirit stones isn't a bad deal. Won't you find out after trying it tomorrow? Senior and Lin's products are definitely the best. He won't ruin his own reputation. Just as the students were discussing fervently, Lin was sitting leisurely in the classroom, listening to the lecture. The long-awaited learning at the university allowed him to relax both physically and mentally. His state of mind was clear and natural, and even his efficiency in listening to the lecture was much higher. A little fairy in a fluttering white dress sat on Lin's shoulder, blinking her eyes curiously. It could be said that her appearance caused quite a stir in the class. Her petite and exquisite figure, as well as her features that were so perfect and holy that no one dared to even think of profanity, instantly caused Lin to turn his head to look at her several hundred times. What this meant was that she turned her head more than once. Some students couldn't help but turn their heads to look at the extremely beautiful little fairy even during the lecture. Lin didn't want to be so ostentatious, but Tina insisted on coming to see what the lecture was like. With Vice Principal Yu Hua's tacit approval, he brought this little fairy along. Today was a public pill refinement class, and the teacher, Yi Jia, was a rather renowned pill refinement master in the Kingdom of the Nine States. Xiaolan didn't need to attend pill refinement classes anymore. She was a soul creation stage pill refinement master, similar to teacher Yi Jia. Which meant that she could also become a teacher at Xiaoxian United University. Tina listened very attentively in the lecture. She had never come into contact with the alchemy system before, but now it was as if she had opened the door to a new world, and her green eyes were glowing with vigor. She also often followed her teacher's demonstration, gathering white holy flames on her fingertips and practicing with him. She was even more serious than Lin when it came to learning. A light breeze occasionally blew in from outside the window, and a faint fragrance drifted over from Tina's direction. That was probably her unique scent, and it was quite refreshing. Lin's alchemy skills were terrible, and he was only at the peak of the flame mastery state. However, since he had the frying pan, he decided to study hard. That was because immortal chefs and alchemy actually had something in common. The way in which various ingredients were cooked and the way in which alchemy could bring out the essence of medicinal ingredients was actually similar. He was the man who wanted to become the god of cooking, so he naturally couldn't miss out on the necessary learning. After class, Su Qianyun, Luo Ziping, Zhong Yongyan, Miao Tian, and the others all gathered around Tina with curiosity in their eyes. They surrounded Lin and asked him all kinds of questions. Tina had never been surrounded by so many giants before, and she immediately grabbed onto Lin's hair nervously as she shrunk back in fear and embarrassment. In the end, it was the gentle and considerate class rep Xianyuan Qing who came out to maintain order. He chased away the onlookers and told them to calm down before he asked the questions as the student representative. Lin knew that Big Brother Qing was actually more curious than the other students, and this could be seen from the light in his eyes. Lin thought about it for a moment before giving Big Brother Qing a brief explanation of Tina's background. This interlude passed by quickly, and before they knew it, the day's lessons drew to a close. Tina had learned a lot, and she said that she was going to continue attending classes with Lin the next day. It felt a little weird for a return-to-void stage fairy to always want to attend classes with a soul formation stage teacher. However, everyone had their own specialties, so Lin didn't have any objections. That night, a huge table was set up in the dorm room. Today, Lin was going to have a good meal with his friends. This trip to the ancient Tai Chu realm had been extremely perilous, so they naturally had to celebrate after successfully completing their mission. Lin and Su Xiaolan were preparing the ingredients for a hot pot dinner. The frying pan could only enhance the flavor of the hot pot for the first time, so the broth and ingredients were very particular. If they were prepared well, the hot pot could last for a very long time. Xianyuan Qing, Su Qianyun, Tang Shimin, Lu Qianhuan, Yao Mingxi, Hu Guan, Yao Xiu, Lu Debao, and the others all arrived at Lin's home, and they were all astonished by the scene before their eyes. Wow! What an adorable snow soul beast! Su Qianyun's bright blue eyes glowed with an unprecedented light. She completely disregarded her princess-like demeanor for the first time as she hurriedly rushed over and picked up Shuizhantian. What a huge soul luo! Wait, not only is this soul luo huge, it even has wings. Lu Qianhuan also ran over with a vibrant smile on her face as she rubbed Shuizhantian's body with her slender hands. Immediately afterward, Yao Xiu and Miao Tian also rushed over. Stupid woman, let go of me! If it weren't for Master, I wouldn't have allowed myself to be manipulated like this. Shuizhantian's round body was rubbed into all kinds of shapes again as he was ravaged. Soul Luo, I'm Lakis. I tossed you onto student Qianyun's body, can you pull me over? Lu Qianhuan asked with a wide grin. Shuizhantian. Lin clasped his face in his hands. Lu Qianhuan was way too into character. However, he took a closer look at Shuizhantian and found that he really did resemble the Soul Luo from the League of Valor. Elsewhere, Lin discovered that a bunch of grown men were staring at him with scorching eyes. Tang Shimin exclaimed in amazement, "You've fulfilled all of my fantasies of beauty." Lu Debao also sighed with emotion. "It's a pity that you're too small." "Don't say that, can't you see that he's already feeling a little embarrassed?" Yao Mingxi advised. Lin knew that these men weren't looking at him. Instead, they were looking at Tina, who was perched on his shoulder. Tina's beauty was already comparable to Chang Yi's, and she was also a cute and adorable fairy, so it was no wonder that these men were so amazed. After that, Lin introduced them to his disciple, Xiao Zhe. When they found out that Xiao Zhe was a primordial dragon-tried mighty figure at the pinnacle of the Return to Void intermediate stage, they were dumbstruck. Thankfully, they had been through a lot of scares during their time with Lin, so their hearts were quite resilient. Thus, they were able to quickly recover and enjoy this hot pot meal. At the dining table, everyone discussed their dreams. Tang Shimin announced his goal, which was to attain his domain before graduation. Everyone felt like he was a lazy bum, and he sobbed with tears streaming down his face. This was the power that the number one prodigy of the cohort should possess. He was under a lot of pressure from hanging out with a bunch of supremely talented prodigies. Lu Qianhuan was about to graduate, and she was hesitating between returning to her sect or staying in the Celestial Court. She also had an idea, which was to go to Earth and design a game that was popular all over the world. There was nothing wrong with being a cheater and becoming a game designer. Xianyuan Qing dreamed of building a new sect, Su Qianyun dreamed of capturing a snow soul beast in 500 years, and Lu Debao dreamed of returning to the sect for free one day. Everyone chatted and drank to their heart's content. Perhaps many years later, they would be able to recall this night and recall the simple dreams they had spoken of. It was such a beautiful night. Chapter 588. The next day, all 3,000 steamers of Dubai's stuffed buns were sold out. Everyone in the Celestial Court was eating stuffed buns for breakfast. There were students who hadn't eaten stuffed buns for a long time and wanted to eat their fill, students who thought the buns were too expensive and were now taking advantage of the 50% discount, students and teachers who were loyal stuffed bun lovers. These were the people who made Dubai's stuffed buns sell out in less than 2 hours. And Lin created a sales legend as a result. earning a whopping 1.5 million spirit stones in a single day. These were all stuffed buns that he had steamed in the ancient Tai Chu realm before storing in his storage ring. It was all thanks to the frying pan that Enlin was able to continue to generate wealth. On this day, Enlin took Tina to class as usual to satisfy her curiosity and thirst for knowledge. Meanwhile, Xiaozi found a place to study the history of the Tai Chu continent in order to better understand this world. Shui Zhantian was taught all kinds of spell techniques by the white scale wolf god. Both of them were savage beasts, so they shared a common language. The other beast pets weren't idling around either. All of them were taking advantage of the superb cultivation environment in the heavenly court to continue their cultivation. After a day of classes, Enlin had completely recovered, and he decided to carry out his final plan, which was to complete the system mission for the body of the war god. It took an hour to absorb one golden realm essence crystal, and it would take over 4 days to absorb 100 golden realm essence crystals. Enlin had even applied for a leave of absence for this. On a certain mountain peak within Xiaoxian United University, Tina spread open her arms, and a white barrier of light appeared around them, isolating them from the outside world. Enlin looked up at the figure in the jade dress before him with a smile. Xiaolan, this is the territory of the Celestial Court, and Tina is here to protect me, so you don't have to worry. Su Xiaolan sat on a white rock and gazed at the scenery in the distance. A few strands of her jet-black hair fluttered in the wind, revealing her beautiful and serene profile. She placed a longsword by her side with a smile on her face. What? I've only just arrived, and you're already chasing me away? Enlin immediately waved his hands. Of course not. I didn't mean that. I just didn't want you to waste your time here. It's not a waste of time. I'm just curious, so I came to see you. Su Xiaolan turned to point at the glittering golden beauty, and a sharp light flashed through her eyes. Then, you have to explain to me what this thing is. Enlin wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. While he was absorbing the Golden Realm Essence Crystal, Su Xiaolan had come to visit him. He looked at Su Xiaolan with a sincere expression. This is my disciple's fault. I'm only responsible for absorbing the Realm Essence Crystals. This kind of hobby really has nothing to do with me. Tina can testify for me. You're right, Giant Enlin. Tina nodded in affirmation. All right, I'll believe that you don't have that kind of fetish. You go ahead, I'll leave after a while. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips. Enlin heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that Su Xiaolan really wasn't angry or disdainful. He then began to focus on absorbing the energy within the Golden Realm Essence Crystals. Time passed by slowly, and nothing out of the ordinary happened. From time to time, beast pets or friends would come over to check on him. Enlin's body was like a bottomless pit that could absorb energy from the Golden Realm Essence Crystals without any limit. On the 4th night, 9 pillars of light suddenly shot into the sky from a certain mountain on the campus of Xiaoxian United University. The entire continent began to tremor, and countless students raised their heads to look at the pillars of light in the distance. Red flames, golden sharpness, blue waves, green vitality, and yellow aura. These 5 pillars of light were the most dazzling, and they shot straight into the heavens like gargantuan pillars. They then formed an extremely fearsome energy formation in the sky before converging together and crashing down toward the ground. The 2 pillars of light of wind and lightning were like coiling dragons, one of which was bright and the other dark, creating a beautiful contrast between yin and yang. This time, the commotion didn't just affect the students. Even countless teachers were alarmed. They all rose into the air and flew toward the source of the pillars of light. The closer they got, the more they could sense just how powerful the aura was. One after another, the pillars of light flew toward the source of the pillars of light. This aura is way too terrifying. Is it a cultivation method or a divine ability? Sai, which mighty figure came to our university to cultivate? Why didn't they inform us in advance? Could it be that the principal has returned? I think I know who it is. A tall and slender woman in fashionable clothes, sitting atop a book, spoke as she adjusted her red-rimmed glasses. She suddenly recalled a certain student in her class who wanted to apply for leave to cultivate. Teacher Yuing, who is he? A teacher asked. He's Lin, Yuing replied. All the teachers. Holy F***ck, it's him again? But if it's him, then it makes sense. A faint white barrier of light enshrouded the center of the 9 pillars of light, isolating it from the detection and intrusion of outsiders. The pillars of light didn't last for long before they began to dissipate. However, the powerful aura emanating from the figure at the center of the white barrier of light did not disappear. Lin had already made his way out of the white barrier of light, and the ancient golden seal on his forehead flashed incessantly. At that moment, all the spectators, regardless of whether they were students or teachers, were struck by the domineering aura of absolute supremacy. Shui Zhantian fell to his knees again upon seeing this, and his round body sprawled onto the ground. Even Xiao Zhe was extremely astonished. Not only could he sense a domineering aura emanating from Lin's body, but he could also sense an aura of eternity and immortality. Lin withdrew his aura and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. I'm invincible. He turned toward Su Xiaolan, who was standing alone nearby. Su Xiaolan, slash me. Whoosh. Su Xiaolan drew her longsword as flames burst forth from its scabbard. A golden sword projection flashed through the sky, crashing down upon Lin with the power to incinerate all things. The sword projection, which was imbued with the power of the vermilion bird, lit up heaven and earth as its terrifying temperatures caused the space around it to twist and warp, and all the plants within a radius of over a kilometer were instantly reduced to ashes. Lin's pupils contracted at the sight of the terrifying sword projection. In the next instant, his body was inundated by golden flames, and the massive mountain behind him was sliced in half. Gasp! Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath. What a terrifying sword projection! Was he really trying to King kill someone? This couple sure has a unique way of interacting. Dioscorea Cancongensis wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and calmed himself down with a smile. What I'm more concerned about right now is whether classmate Lin is dead or not. Flying Sword God spoke with a concerned expression. Shui Zhantian was also given a huge fright. You reap what you sow. Master, is your habit of seeking abuse as soon as you make a breakthrough ultimately going to get you killed? In the distance, Vice Principal Yuhua looked on at the slowly collapsing mountain with a sense of weariness in his heart. He felt like it was time to come up with a school rule for protecting the environment. Otherwise, if these freaks continued to wreak havoc every day, the university's scenic spots would be destroyed sooner or later. Why didn't he realize that students were so destructive? Cough cough. Holy F***ck, Xiaolan, are you trying to murder your husband? Lin crawled up from a pile of rubble with an extremely disheveled expression. Su Xiaolan stared at Lin with a hint of surprise on her face. Huh? Your skin is so thick now? Whoosh. Another sword projection sliced through the sky. This time, an extremely vast and transcendent power was imbued within the sword projection. Everyone felt as if they could see a white holy beast with its wings spread open as it pounced directly toward Lin. No! Lin yelled as his body was completely submerged within the sword projection. The white flaming sword slashed across several miles, like a white light that could burn the heavens. Everything in its path was destroyed, and several mountain peaks in the distance were also chopped off. Vice Principal Yuhua was a little dumbstruck by the scenes unfolding before him. He couldn't care less about anything else as he charged over to stop this earth-shattering domestic violence. Chapter 589. All of the students who didn't know what was going on were shocked by the terrifying sword strike. Even those who were close to Su Xiaolan and Lin were shocked. My God, did Lin get into a fight with Xiaolan? Su Qianyun covered her mouth with a hand as she stared at the events unfolding on the mountain with astonishment on her face. I feel like there's something fishy going on here. Weren't they on good terms before this? Xian Yuan Qing pondered this for a moment. A faint smile appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face. They're just courting death. What kind of person would tell others to attack them after mastering a divine technique? It's no wonder that Xiaolan is mad at you for using such a method to express your joy. Is no one concerned about whether classmate Enlin is dead or not? Tang Shimin asked with a shocked expression. Everyone rolled their eyes at Tang Shimin but didn't say anything. Tang Shimin. Enlin's figure appeared again, amid a cloud of dust. His clothes were in tatters, but his skin was completely unscathed. Stop. Xiaolan, that's enough. As soon as they met, he immediately waved his hand. After Su Xiaolan's vermilion bird bloodline was infused into her sword strike, its power was comparable to that of a return-to-void stage cultivator. Even so, it was unable to leave a single mark on Enlin's body. No way, he's still fine? Su Xiaolan was truly astonished this time. Her brows perked up as the dragon sparrow sword in her hand began to ring again, and an even more terrifying aura began to emanate from it. Wait! Right at this moment, a middle-aged man with bushy eyebrows and large eyes appeared beside Su Xiaolan and intervened. Stop fighting, it's not good to injure the flowers and plants in a battle like this. If you really want to fight and flirt, do it outside of the school. Su Xiaolan blushed upon hearing this, and she silently sheathed her long sword. Enlin heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this, and he turned to Vice Principal Yuhua with a grateful expression. The Vice Principal of Yuhua glared at Enlin and warned, if you cause any mountain to collapse again, you will have to pay for it. Enlin's face twitched. Why are you looking at me like that? Shouldn't you be saying that to Su Xiaolan? This farce quickly calmed down, and everyone left with some unsatisfied expressions on their faces. I didn't expect classmate Su Xiaolan to be so strong already. The magnificence of that sword strike was much more powerful than our sword immortal teacher. Senior Enlin's skin is really thick. He actually didn't get injured after taking that sword attack head-on. What's the point? None of them are fighting back. How boring. Where's my god and who's always throwing insults at heaven and earth? I agree. I also want to see the two of them fight. It must be very exciting. I feel that ever since the free-for-all battle, Senior Enlin's style has changed. He's been a coward all the way. Could it be that God and obtain the inheritance of the turtle? Bullshit. Since he's so powerful, he must have inherited at least the Xian Wu level. Su Xiaolan made her way over to Enlin's side and poked his muscles with a finger. They were a little tough and a little bouncy, and they didn't feel any different from normal. She asked curiously, what kind of divine ability did you cultivate? How come it's so powerful? Enlin puffed out his chest with a smug smile. It's called the body of the war god. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. What a tacky name. She then asked, so your skin is so thick, can you still feel pain? Of course. When you slashed me just then, it hurt a lot. It's just that there were no scars. Enlin was telling the truth. Pain had nothing to do with whether or not his skin had been sliced open. He was hoping that Su Xiaolan would comfort him after saying this. To his surprise, Su Xiaolan heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. It's all right, Enlin. The phenomenon of heaven and earth, brought about by Enlin's body of the war god, once again created a massive stir in the entire campus. As for the person in question, Enlin had already returned to his dorm room with Su Xiaolan and the others. In order to celebrate his successful seclusion, he held another frying pan banquet. In reality, this couldn't really be called seclusion. After all he did was absorb, and he managed to cultivate a divine ability. Enlin hadn't even tried going into seclusion, and there was no need for him to do so anyway. At the frying pan banquet, the Immortal Spirit Tower is going to open tomorrow, and it's open for 3 days. Do you guys want to go? Tang Shimin asked as he ate. Immortal Spirit Tower? What's that? Enlin's expression turned blank. A warm smile appeared on Xianyuan Cheng's face. Unlin, you were in seclusion for a few days, so I'll tell you about it. The Immortal Spirit Tower is located in a restricted area of our campus, and there are wisps of divine intents left behind by the mighty sages of the Celestial Court within the tower. Students can unleash their divine intents into the tower to battle against these mighty figures. Generally speaking, only fifth-year students have an opportunity to enter the Immortal Spirit Tower before graduation. However, third-year and fourth-year students who have reached the spirit-nurturing final stage can also enter the tower. Unlin's curiosity was piqued. Then what are the benefits of entering the Immortal Spirit Tower to battle mighty figures? The Immortal Spirit Tower has a total of 99 levels, and you'll receive additional spirit stones and pills from the Celestial Court for every level you advance to, Tang Shimin replied with a smile. Is there anything else? Filthy rich and didn't really care about these things. Tang Shimin's face convulsed slightly upon seeing Unlin's expression. As long as you can pass level 80, you'll be inducted into the university's Hall of Fame. Oh, I was already inducted into the Hall of Fame when I was a first-year university student. Is there anything else? Unlin had been inducted into the Hall of Fame as an exception, so he didn't think much of it. Tang Shimin almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He paused for a moment before continuing. If your aptitude is exceptional and you receive the acknowledgement of the divine intents of the mighty figures on the 80th level or higher, then you'll have a chance to receive their spell techniques. Unlin's interest was finally piqued here, and his eyes lit up. Senior student Tang, which level did you reach? Su Qianyun turned to Tang Shimin with curiosity in her mellow voice. A smug smile appeared on Tang Shimin's face. I'm sorry, but I made it to level 70. I came first in our third-year university. Oh, everyone in the room exclaimed in surprise. That's because aside from him, Zhua Qiubing was the only other spirit-nurturing final-stage cultivator in our third-year university. The two of them came first in the competition. Sure, there was a wave of disdain in the room. Tang Shimin. Then, Lu Qianhuan, you were a fourth-year university student at the time, right? What level did you reach? Su Qianyun turned to look at Lu Qianhuan curiously. 87. Lu Qianhuan pursed her lips in resignation. That's so impressive. Another wave of exclamations erupted in the room. Much more impressive than senior student Tang. You can't say that about senior student Tang. After all, he's only a spirit-nurturing final-stage cultivator. That's true. We're all at least half-step soul formation stage cultivators, so we should be able to make it past level 70. Let's aim for level 80 and enter the Hall of Fame. That's right, if senior student Tang can make it to level 70, why can't we? Su Xiaolan, Su Qianyun, Xianyuan Cheng, and the others all looked at each other with knowing smiles on their faces. Tears streamed down Tang Shimin's face as he felt like he had been dealt a heavy blow to his heart. Couldn't they just talk like normal people? Did they have to do this? At the same time, he was also feeling extremely remorseful. Why did he have to flex in front of these freaks? Everyone chatted as they ate, and they all decided to go to the Immortal Spirit Tower the next day. This was a free opportunity after all. Chapter 590. Early in the morning, within a restricted area of Xiuxian United University, there were layers of chains that resembled clouds and mist that sealed off the space within a radius of 15 kilometers. In that sealed space, there was an incomparably huge, towering green celestial pagoda. The Immortal Pagoda had a total of 99 levels. The bottom level was the most spacious with a radius of 1.5 kilometers, which was more than enough to accommodate 10,000 students. As the pagoda rose higher and higher, each level became narrower and narrower until the top level was only about 5 kilometers in radius. At this moment, there were already 10,000 students gathered outside the pagoda. All of them were fifth-year students who were about to graduate. Stuffed buns. Freshly made stuffed buns ignored by Dubai. The sudden peddler was so out of place with the surrounding atmosphere. Unlin was selling stuffed buns ignored by Dabai in the restricted area. Due to the fact that the Immortal Spirit Tower had opened earlier than usual, Unlin had no choice but to switch to selling stuffed buns. No matter when or where, one could never give up on one's source of wealth. This was a fundamental principle that Filthy Rich adhered to. Unlin's appearance created quite a stir within the restricted area. Isn't that classmate Unlin? He's selling stuffed buns here? He's probably here to participate in the Immortal Spirit Tower. He's already a third-year student, so selling stuffed buns is probably just a passing coincidence. I was just worried that I wouldn't be able to eat stuffed buns ignored by Dabai today. Let's go buy some as well. Many students swarmed toward Unlin, and soon, all of Unlin's stuffed buns had been sold out. Some of the students even began to shed tears as they ate the stuffed buns. Unlin was given a massive fright upon seeing this. He knew that his stuffed buns were delicious, but wasn't it a little bit of an exaggeration to say that they were so delicious that they made people cry? Could it be that they were so disgusting that they were crying? Right at this moment, his question was answered by the complaints of the students. Wow, these stuffed buns are so delicious. Yeah, I won't be able to eat such delicious stuffed buns after graduation. Sigh. The stuffed buns ignored by Dabai are a specialty of the Alliance of Cultivation after all. I have to buy some before I leave and store them in my storage ring. Unlin understood now. It turned out that the fifth-year seniors were about to graduate, and at a specific location, touching something hurt. Although they said they couldn't bear to part with steamed bun, they probably just couldn't bear to leave this school. They also couldn't bear to part with their classmates, friends, and teachers. For cultivators, 5 years was like the blink of an eye. But could it really be calculated in this way? Unlin had only spent 3 years at the university, but he had made many friends and made many precious and happy memories. Everything in the university had been very good, but after leaving the university, everything had changed. For the seniors, this was a farewell to the verdant and beautiful campus, so they would shed tears of sadness. With this in mind, Unlin couldn't help but turn his gaze toward Lu Qianhuan. She was also a fifth-year university student who was about to graduate. Lu Qianhuan had also bought a steamer full of stuffed buns and was currently enjoying them. Her little mouth wriggled, her fair and tender cheeks puffed up, and her lively purple eyes narrowed in happiness. She didn't seem to be affected by the emotions of her classmates as she continued to gorge on the buns in an adorable and alluring manner. Students, the Immortal Spirit Tower is about to be opened, so please gather here. An elderly man with an extremely vast aura stood in front of the Immortal Spirit Tower with a smile on his face. His name was Bai Zhong, and he was the guardian of this restricted area. His cultivation base was clearly at the return to void stage. After the assembly was complete, over 10,000 streams of divine intent shot forth from his hand before landing on each of the students. These were the entry passes for the students to enter the Immortal Spirit Tower, as well as the spell technique that would record the number of levels each student had reached. Within the Immortal Spirit Tower, all of your cultivation bases will be restricted to 1% of your original cultivation base, and you won't be able to use weapons, talismans, pills, or any other external objects. You can only use your own powers to battle the divine intents of the mighty figures of the past, Bai Zhong explained in a slow voice. His words were like a brand that was branded into the hearts of all the students, making it impossible for them to forget or ignore them. This was a rule that everyone was aware of, so they didn't pay much heed to it. Over 10,000 students poured into the first level of the Immortal Spirit Tower. The floor was paved with white jade stones, and it was extremely spacious. There were 4 huge cauldrons with flames burning in the 4 corners of the floor. Wow, this place is huge, Su Qianyun exclaimed as she surveyed her surroundings with curiosity in her eyes. Lu Qianhuan explained as if she had been through this before. The first 80 levels are all cleared in one go, but even if we're standing together, it's still a one-on-one battle. which means that there will be over 10,000 mighty figures unleashing their divine intents later. That's awesome! Su Qianyun blinked her dreamy eyes with an adorable expression. Boom! At this moment, a burst of mighty power descended from the sky, making all of the students feel as if their bodies had been completely emptied. The restrictive power of the immortal spirit tower is beginning to appear. Tang Shimin looked up with battle intent surging from his body. Aside from all of the rewards available in the immortal spirit tower, the opportunity to battle mighty figures of the past would be immensely beneficial to one's combat prowess as well as their observation of Tao. All of a sudden, countless projections materialized in the sky. They were either wielding spears or swords, and all of them pounced toward the students on the ground below. All of these projections had targets in mind, and each of them corresponded to a student. The first 20 levels seemed to all be projections of divine intents from spirit-nurturing stage cultivators, Tang Shimin observed. Most of the 5th-year students were at the Tao body stage, so even with 99% of their power suppressed, it was still extremely difficult for them to face off against the projections of spirit-nurturing stage cultivators. Soon, there were some students who weren't fast enough and were slain by the projections of divine intents. Some of them had their chests punctured and fell unconscious. Generally speaking, the projections of divine intents couldn't kill, but they could knock students unconscious. Almost all of the students from the 100th class had been wiped out. There were also many casualties among the other classes, and some of them were caught up in fierce battles. A heroic spirit in the form of a female with long flowing hair and a spear in her hand pounced toward Enlin's heart. Enlin glanced at the woman, and his hand shot out like a gust of wind. He slapped the woman to the ground, and her body instantly disintegrated into nothingness. The projections of divine intents required a very long time to recover, and it required a lot of energy as well. This was also why the Immortal Spirit Tower was only opened once a year. After vanquishing all of the enemies around him, Enlin began to survey his surroundings. Close to 2,000 people had already fallen unconscious, 7,000 had already finished their battles, and there were still 1,000 people who were still engaged in fierce battles. For example, Su Xiaolan and Xianyuan Qing, they had all KO'd their opponents in a single exchange. 15 minutes later, there were only a few dozen people left. Another 15 minutes later, there were only a handful of people left. What was it like to have thousands of spectators spectating their battle? One of the female students was flushed with embarrassment, but she was still unable to defeat the projection of divine intents. She was on the brink of tears, and she felt extremely humiliated. In the end, she lost her composure and was cut down by the projection of divine intents. The female student finally broke down and fainted with tears of humiliation and indignation. Enlin buried his face in his hands. What a tragedy! Another 15 minutes later, there was still a male student who had yet to finish his battle. That male student seemed to be very proficient in using vital energy to protect his body. Yellow vital energy materialized into a suit of indestructible armor. The projection of divine intents was unable to break through his defenses. His offensive prowess was insufficient, and he was unable to kill his opponent. Thus, the two of them were locked in a stalemate. Thump thump thump, bang bang bang, clatter clatter clatter, puff puff puff. Time slowly passed by. I finally understand why the Immortal Spirit Tower takes so many days to open, Enlin spoke expressionlessly. Don't worry, let's just watch the show. Xianyuan Cheng offered words of consolation. I really want to help him. Enlin gritted his teeth. That works too, but you'll be eliminated. Lu Qianhuan heaved a forlorn sigh. Thus, over 7,000 students silently looked on as a male student battled with a projection of divine intents, creating an extremely peculiar scene. Chapter 591. There were so many students here, and not all of them had good tempers. They couldn't participate in the battle, but they could still talk. Hey buddy, don't just focus on defense, take the initiative and attack. Hit its waist, left side, now right side. Attack its lower body, attack its lower body. Holy F***ck, why are you so stupid? The male in the middle of the battle. In the beginning there were several dozen instructors instructing him, but they soon discovered that the male didn't seem to understand anything at all. Slowly, the tone of the conversation began to change. Are you done yet? Just surrender if you can't do it. Wasting other people's time is the same as murdering them. You're murdering thousands of people. Is this a F** King Turtle? It's always on the defense. Did he learn this from Godin? Could it be that he's going to be a tortoise together with him? And Lin's body swayed violently upon hearing this. Who the F** CK was the one who said that? Come out and I promise I won't beat you to death. Su Xiaolan and Su Qianyun had also heard this, and they couldn't help but burst into laughter. As the saying goes, a prolonged defense is bound to fail. In the end, it was the divine sense of the battle that broke through the man's Qi-Jin defense and pierced through his chest. The male closed his eyes in bliss. In the end, it was the divine intent of the battle that broke through the male's energy barrier and punctured his chest. The male closed his eyes in bliss. It was already a huge win for him to have thousands of students spectate one of his matches before he graduated. The gate to the second level of the Immortal Spirit Tower slowly opened, and everyone climbed up the stairs to the second level in no time. This time, over 7,000 divine intents converged in the air before pouncing toward the students on the ground below. And Lin also slapped the divine intent of the battle to death with a palm. The divine intents this time weren't much more powerful than the ones from last time, but over 1,000 students were still eliminated. Thus, the third level, the fourth level, the fifth level to Enlin and the other powerful seated participants, these divine intents could be taken care of in a single round. However, it took a long time for the other students to be defeated. On the 20th level, Enlin also slapped the divine intent of the battle to death with a palm. He raised his head and looked around. Only 1,000 people were still fighting. And now, he had stayed in the tower for an entire day. The novelty brought about by entering the tower had already passed. Enlin and the others were bored to death and gathered together to gamble. Enlin spread out a pile of cards with numbers on them. There were 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, all the way to 100. I'll bet on this trial ending in 30 minutes. Xianyuan Cheng pulled out 10,000 spirit stones from his storage ring and stacked them on the table. Heh heh. Lu Qianhuan chuckled disdainfully. Do you really expect these stupid students to finish their battle in 30 minutes? I bet more than 100 minutes. Then I'll also bet on more than 100 minutes. Su Qianyun pondered for a few seconds before deciding to follow Lu Qianhuan's lead. She placed 10,000 spirit stones on the 100 card. In reality, the odds of winning on the 100 minutes card were the highest. It was just that the odds were quite low. Su Xiaolan paused momentarily before placing 10,000 spirit stones on the 50 minutes card. I'll bet 50. I've never won this number before. Tang Shimin scratched his head. I'll bet 60. Lu Zhan took a deep breath. I'll bet 70. And Lin placed 10,000 spirit stones on the 100 card. I'll bet more than 100. Start the countdown. 30 minutes later, Xianyuan Cheng looked at the dozens of people still fighting on the platform with a resentful expression. Why do you always disappoint me? Don't you know how hard it is to earn money? 10,000 spirit stones. 50 minutes later, Su Xiaolan pursed her lips and looked at Enlin with a teary expression. Enlin smiled warmly. Don't worry, Xiaolan. I'm rich enough to make you lose a few thousand times. A vibrant smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. I like what you're saying. I'll come back to you for more money when I run out of money. You can come back even if you have money. Enlin replied. Lu Qianhuan's expression darkened. You're already gambling, but you're still showing off to single people? Is that really a good idea? F***ck him up, F***ck him up? That's right. Tang Shimin roared with excitement. Everyone looked at the battle on the field with nervous expressions. Finally, after a series of intense rumbling sounds, the last divine sense warrior was shattered by a spell. Anlin looked at the time. It was quite clear that Tang Shimin, who had bet 60 points, had won. Ha 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 ha! I'm not going to hold back then! Tang Shimin chortled like a 50-kilogram child as he swept away all the spirit stones in front of him. He had guessed very accurately these past few times, and he had already won a few times, so he was very happy. Of course, he was also happy because he could finally beat these supremely talented prodigies with his own strength, even though it was only in terms of gambling, but this was also one of his abilities. He was going to beat up anyone who said this wasn't a part of his strength. It had to be said that Anlin and the others' gambling was a very beautiful sight to behold in the Immortal Spirit Tower. Many students imitated their behavior. Some gambled on the time, while others gambled on the outcome of a battle. In any case, there were all kinds of gamblers. It couldn't be helped, it was just too boring. Cultivate, you say? Come on, my strength has been restricted to 1% of my original strength. How the F***ck am I supposed to cultivate? Anlin and the others all heaved forlorn sighs at Tang Shimin's victory before continuing on to the next level. This time, the number of students had been reduced to around 1,000. These 1,000 students were the elite students of Xiaoxian United University, and even the weakest among them was of the 9th stage Dao body. On the 21st level, boom! Terrifying auras converged in the air, immediately following which a series of powerful divine intent battle masters began to appear. All of them had their own domains, which were either bone-chilling or scorching. Anlin was a little surprised. Looks like all of our opponents this time are divine intent battle masters of the half-step soul formation stage. Xianyuanqing nodded. Many students will be able to observe many things in advance by using them as opponent. Our university sure is generous. A man with gale force winds swirling around his body had already pounced toward Anlin as he spoke. Anlin raised a palm and slapped the man away again. Of course, it's still not going to be of much help to us. Xianyuanqing heaved a forlorn sigh before slashing his finger through the air toward the oncoming opponent, upon which he was sliced in half. Thus, the crowd began to gather and gamble again. This time, Big Brother Qing chose to trust his classmates, and he finally won once. The battle concluded after around 30 minutes. There was no helping it. Both sides were divine intent battle masters of the half-step soul formation stage, and the battle was extremely intense. Even if some of the students wanted to slack off, they wouldn't have enough energy to last that long. Big Brother Qing was extremely elated. It was as if his trust had been repaid. This time, the number of students decreased drastically from 1,000 to just over 600 immediately afterward. From the 20th level all the way to the 30th level, there were only divine intent battle masters of the half-step soul formation stage. At the 31st level, there were only 200 people. On the 31st level, there were divine intent battle masters of the soul formation initial stage. Anlin slapped his opponent to end the battle again. On the 46th level, there were divine intent battle masters of the soul formation intermediate stage. Anlin slapped his opponent twice to end the battle. On the 61st level, there were divine intent battle masters of the soul formation final stage. Anlin slapped his opponent to death for 3 years. The 70th floor was also the floor where Senior Tang had suffered a grievous defeat. Anlin finally encountered some challenges. Chapter 592. On the 70th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, there were only 8 people left standing. Lu Qianhuan, Lu Yuan, Tang Shimin, Zhua Qiubing, Anlin, Su Xiaolan, Xianyuanqing, and Su Qianyun. Tang Shimin looked up into the sky with a scorching light in his eyes. I'm no longer the same person I was a year ago. This time, I'm definitely going to pass the 70th level. Anlin was also getting a little excited. To be able to defeat senior student Tang a year ago, the divine intents on this level were most likely going to be quite powerful. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, a gigantic screen of water appeared in the air, displaying the scenes taking place within the Immortal Spirit Tower. There were still several thousand students who had already awakened, and all of them chose to spectate the battles taking place within the tower. Even though they were unable to participate in the battles in person, being able to spectate the battles between the prodigies and the divine intents would still be beneficial to their own cultivation. There are only 2 people left in our cohort. The third-year students are so freakishly talented. They've already made up half of the entire Immortal Spirit Tower. Do you guys think senior student Lu Yuan will be able to make it into the Hall of Fame? It'll be difficult. He's only at the spirit nurturing final stage. Just as all the students were discussing among themselves. Boom! Vital energy suddenly surged in the air above the Immortal Spirit Tower, and 8 extremely powerful figures appeared in the air. An excited expression appeared on Enlin's face. All of these divine intents belonged to return to void stage mighty figures. No wonder senior student Tang was defeated. In terms of power, they were on a completely different level. Even though this was only a wisp of divine intents, Enlin and the others were all weakened by 100-fold, so this was going to be a very challenging battle. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sound of something tearing through the air rang out, and the 8 divine senses immediately began fighting as soon as they appeared. The divine intents charging toward Enlin was a man wielding a metal hammer. He swung the hammer down upon Enlin with an extremely powerful aura, as if a mountain over 10,000 feet tall were crashing down upon Enlin. Enlin's blood essence surged as he looked at the oncoming attack, and he felt as if the Earth Lotus Supreme skill within his body had been activated. This was the boundless power of the Earth. Evidently, the hammer-wielding man had also grasped a trace of this level of power. Good. Enlin was excited. This was the feeling of fighting against experts and accumulating combat experience. A golden lotus flower appeared on his forehead, and his Earth Lotus Supreme skill was activated on its own under the guidance of his body of the war god. His fist began to glow with a golden light, and a vast and powerful aura erupted forth, causing the space around him to congeal momentarily. This was the first time Enlin had unleashed the power of the initial success stage of the body of the war god. He felt that the enemy in front of him was worthy of this move. As the hammer fell, distorted ripples appeared in the space. Enlin threw a punch directly at the iron hammer that was coming straight at him. The golden light carried boundless strength. Rumble! A deafening explosion resounded. The golden light collided with the hammer, and a terrifying shockwave erupted forth. The terrifying power imbued within the golden light instantly pulverized both the hammer and its wielder. Then, before the power of the golden light dissipated, it shot out in a straight line into the distance, leaving behind a shockingly powerful golden trail in the sky. Boom! Another deafening boom erupted. A sword-wielding woman was struck by the golden light, and her body flew back before crashing into the wall of the pagoda as her body slowly dissipated. Enlin stared at the scenes unfolding before his eyes with a dumbstruck expression. I just killed a double kill? Tang Shimen was also dumbstruck. He gripped his longsword and stared blankly at Enlin. His expression seemed to be saying, "Who am I? Where am I? How did my opponent suddenly die?" He was clearly in the middle of a fierce battle when his opponent was blasted to death by a streak of golden light. What was he supposed to do? Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, all of the students also drew a sharp intake of breath. Is this what it means to kill 2 birds with 1 stone? That's insane. The Tamer of Divine Lightning is truly terrifying. God and really is one of the most powerful cultivators in the Immortal Spirit Tower. But what's going to happen to junior student Tang now? If he intentionally interfered in a battle between other students, he would be expelled from the Immortal Spirit Tower. However, Godin accidentally killed his opponent because he was too bad *SS, so he shouldn't be disqualified, right? Enlin and Tang Shimen looked at each other with dumbstruck expressions. At this moment, a white-robed elderly man appeared between the two of them. He was none other than the guardian and administrator of the restricted area, Bai Zhong. Bai Zhong's face convulsed imperceptibly as he looked at An Lin and Tang Shimin. He turned to Tang Shimin first before asking in a solemn voice, "Did you conspire with him?" Tang Shimin was on the verge of tears upon hearing this. "No way. I didn't know anything. I was in the middle of a fierce battle, and the monster was somehow snatched away." Bai Zhong then turned to An Lin. "You did it on purpose?" An Lin shook his head vehemently. "I really didn't do it on purpose. I just didn't control my strength properly." Bai Zhong took a deep breath before roaring with rage. "How old are you? You can't even control your strength properly? What if you accidentally injure innocent living beings when you're fighting near a crowd? How can a person who doesn't even know how much power he has understand his own Tao? And you?" Bai Zhong pointed at Tang Shimin before pointing at An Lin. "Can't you two put some distance between yourselves? There's so much space here, and your strength has been restricted to 1%. How can you two put so much distance between yourselves?" Bai Zhong continued his rant while Tang Shimin and An Lin nodded with indignation on their faces. After this brutal lesson, Bai Zhong finally vented his negative emotions and heaved a forlorn sigh. "Don't do it again." His body disappeared on the spot as he spoke. An Lin heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this, and he turned to Tang Shimin with an apologetic expression. "Sorry for interrupting your battle, senior student Tang." Tang Shimin shook his head blankly. "No, it's fine." He then looked around with a dazed expression. "Did I pass the 70th level just like that?" "Congratulations, senior student Tang." An Lin smiled. Tang Shimin pursed his lips. "I just wanted to prove that I'm different from last year. I do feel a little different now. After all, I've finally passed the 70th level. But why don't I feel happy about it?" An Lin didn't know what to say. Senior student Tang didn't seem to be very pleased with this assist that he had accidentally provided. Before they knew it, Su Xiaolan, Lu Qianhuan, Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qianyun, and Zhuo Qiubing had also concluded their battles. The fifth-year elite, Lu Yuan, was only at the spirit-nurturing final stage, and he was gradually losing in the face of a return-to-void stage divine intent battle. However, his eyes were glowing, and he was feeling more and more elated as he battled. It was clear that he had reaped many rewards from his battles. 15 minutes later, Lu Yuan was defeated. He looked toward the immortal spirit tower with a hint of disappointment. In the end, he still wouldn't be able to leave his mark on the University Hall of Fame before he graduated. Chapter 593. On the 71st level, Tang Shimin made up his mind. He was going to prove himself this time. He was no longer the same person as last year. 7 Return to Void stage celestial immortals materialized from their divine intents began to appear in the air. An Lin narrowed his eyes slightly. His opponents this time were clearly more powerful than last time. The aura fluctuations of the previous level belonged to new Return to Void stage cultivators, but this time, they belonged to Return to Void stage cultivators whose cultivation bases had stabilized. A Return to Void stage celestial immortal pounced toward An Lin with 2 golden shuttles materialized in his hand. These shuttles were so sharp that they looked as if they could easily tear through space with a single slash. An Lin used his agile movement techniques to evade the celestial immortal's attack. He glanced at Tang Shimin out of the corner of his eye, and he heaved a sigh of relief upon discovering that he had already distanced himself from him. If he were to accidentally kill his opponent again, then he really wouldn't be able to explain himself. An Lin didn't think too much about this. He continued to use gentle techniques to battle his opponent before slowly increasing the power of his attack. Tang Shimin didn't have the time to do that. He was fighting a celestial immortal in front of him with great difficulty. The celestial immortal's sword techniques were extremely powerful, and the true intent of the sword imbued within his attacks made Tang Shimen's heart palpitate with excitement. Whoosh! The celestial immortal's long sword began to ring, and it was about to unleash a sword technique. Tang Shimen's body trembled as he prepared to charge forward. All of a sudden, a white flaming sword projection flashed through the air with the terrifying power of holy flames. The celestial immortal's eyes widened, and his body was slowly sliced in half before falling to the ground and dissipating. Tang Shimen's eyes also widened as he stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before him. He raised his head in confusion and turned toward a certain direction. There was a woman in a jade dress holding a long sword materialized from the holy vermilion flame, and she was looking toward him with an awkward expression. I'm sorry, I thought it wouldn't be so powerful after suppressing my power by 100 times. Su Xiaolan spoke with an apologetic expression. Tang Shimen's body swayed slightly, and he felt like throwing up a mouthful of blood. Why did my monster get stolen again? At this moment, he only felt that the world was a vast expanse, and in his mind, a plum blossom song reverberated endlessly. Enlin was also dumbstruck. He was just about to carefully kill his opponent when he saw Tang Shimen's opponent being killed by Su Xiaolan. What kind of experience was that? Enlin felt like he was too embarrassed to look Tang Shimen in the eye. After all, his Dao partner-to-be was the one who had done this. For some reason, he was also struck by a sense of guilt. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, thousands of students also fell silent as they stared at Tang Shimen with complex expressions. Junior Tang won without doing anything again, that's right. Congratulations! The students of our celestial court are really getting better and better. Congratulations? Why don't I see any happy expression on your face? I think this is cheating. This is F*King hiring a substitute. I want to report this. In any case, I've got to hand it to her. As long as she has the right posture, she'll be able to pass regardless of whether she's powerful or not. This is actually the fault of junior student Su Xiaolan. I have to say, she's simply too powerful. That flaming sword strike was simply too terrifying, and that's why she accidentally killed an ally. Did Enlin and Su Xiaolan plan this from the very beginning? It should be said that people who aren't the same type of people don't belong in the same family. Just as all of the students were discussing spiritedly among themselves, Bai Zhong appeared within the Immortal Spirit Tower again. He looked at Tang Shimen and Su Xiaolan with a sense of weariness in his heart. When had something like this ever happened to any of the students in the past? It was understandable if they were injured by accident, but to be reduced to ashes by a single F*King attack? That was way too ridiculous. Both of you, tell me about this matter. I told you not to do it again. Bai Zhong harumphed coldly. Tang Shimen felt extremely wronged. He didn't want to do it again, but there was nothing he could do about it. He was also in despair. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I won't use too much force in the future. Su Xiaolan lowered her head in apology. She had only wanted to test out her vermilion bird flaming sword strike, but she didn't think that it would be this powerful. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'll. Tang Shimen suddenly didn't know what to say, and he stammered as he tried to speak. What was he supposed to do in the future? What had he done wrong? He didn't know. Bai Zhong also felt like his chest was constricting, and his head was throbbing with pain. There had never been such a powerful soul formation stage student who was able to kill 2 divine intent enemies with a single strike. Even if there were extremely powerful students, they would usually be able to control their own power very well. In any case, there had never been a student as lucky as Tang Shimen. This was a battlefield with a radius of over a kilometer. Who would have thought that his divine intent enemies would just so happen to be within the range of their attacks, and they would be struck right in the bullseye? Su Xiaolan and Enlin had clearly been killed by mistake, so it was very difficult for Bai Zhong to expel them. You two don't ever do it again. If something like this happens again, you'll have to bear the consequences. Bai Zhong really didn't know what to say, so he could only point at Su Xiaolan and Tang Shimin as he spoke. Why did this sound so familiar? Su Xiaolan nodded and promised that she wouldn't do it again, while Tang Shimin nodded with an aggrieved expression. Bai Zhong left, and the battle in the tower also drew to a close. Zhuo Qiubing panted heavily as he killed his opponent, and he turned to look at the calm and collected Tang Shimin with an envious expression on his face. He had fought for his life and finally defeated his opponent. As for Tang Shimin, who was in the same batch as him, he didn't even have to fight. He had been beaten by Tang Shimin last year. Could it be that even after progressing to the half-step soul formation stage, he still wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being dominated by Tang Shimin? Terrifying, he couldn't afford to mess with him. Not long after that, everyone passed through this level and began to proceed to the 72nd level. Tang Shimin gritted his teeth and swore to himself that he was going to prove himself this time. He was going to defeat his opponent with his own power and not be disturbed by anyone again. He made his way to a corner, and all of the other students seemed to be able to sense his emotions, so they all chose to distance themselves from him and maintain a safe distance from him. The 7 divine intent enemies began to revert back to their original appearances before charging toward everyone with powerful auras. An intense battle instantly erupted, and then Tang Shimin was defeated. His chest was punctured by his opponent's lightning, and his entire body was numb as he lay on the ground, hovering between dizziness and clarity. Enlin and the others had actually concluded their battle much faster than Tang Shimin's. They had been spectating from the sidelines this entire time, and they had witnessed Tang Shimin's defeat. Tang Shimin turned to Enlin and the others. Am I more powerful than I was last year? I'm definitely more powerful than I was last year, am I right? If I had fought on the 70th or 71st level, I would definitely have won, am I right? I'm no longer the same person as I was last year, am I right? His words were laced with blood and tears, and the scene was extraordinarily touching. Senior Student Tang, you're one of the most powerful cultivators of the spirit-nurturing stage. Su Xiaolan offered words of consolation. Senior Student Tang, you're actually powerful enough to pass even the 72nd level. It's just that your mental state was affected by us, which resulted in your defeat. Enlin also found an excuse to console Tang Shimin. Tears welled up in Tang Shimin's eyes. Next year, I'll definitely. Right at this moment, another bolt of lightning fell from the divine intent battle, and Tang Shimin was knocked unconscious. Tang Shimin was teleported out of the tower just like that, and he didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence. Everyone fell silent. No, it should be called a moment of silence. After a minute of silence, Enlin and the others continued onward to the next level. Chapter 594. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, thousands of students heaved forlorn sighs upon seeing Tang Shimin's defeat. I thought Junior Brother Tang would be able to lie on a few more floors. Brother, you're going too far. Junior Tang had already worked very hard, and those things were not something he could control. I think the hard-working Junior Brother Tang is so cool. I feel the same way. I feel the same way. I feel that someone as hard-working as him might be half a step away from the divinity transformation stage in the next year. He can make a name for himself in the Hall of Fame of the university. The students were still discussing spiritedly among themselves. At this moment, Tang Shimin had already woken up. His body was still numb from being pierced by lightning, and there was even a lingering feeling of impending death. It had to be said that the Immortal Spirit Tower's battle simulation was very powerful. It could train a trial-taker's combat prowess to the fullest extent, and he had learned a lot from that battle. It was a pity that he was defeated so early. Tang Shimin turned his gaze toward Enlin and the others. On the screen of water, their battle was extremely spectacular, and he couldn't help but yearn for it. Enlin and the others overcame all difficulties and unknowingly arrived at the 80th level. Unfortunately, Zhuoqiubing was defeated on the 77th level. He made up his mind that he had to pass the 80th level before he graduated and enter the university's Hall of Fame. Now Enlin, Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Qing, Su Qianyun, and Lu Qianhuan had arrived at the 80th level. This was the first level of the Immortal Spirit Tower. If he succeeded, he would have fame, power, and all sorts of wealth. If he failed, he would only be able to obtain some pills and spirit stones, and then he would dejectedly leave. The divine intent combatants on the 80th level were probably at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage when they were alive. Not only can they use all types of high-rank spell techniques, but they can even manifest their Tao. They're extremely powerful, so don't get careless. Lu Qianhuan immediately gave an introduction upon arriving at the 80th level. Su Qianyun and the others all wore grave expressions on their faces. As half-step soul formation stage cultivators, they were already feeling quite strained on the first few levels. Zhuoqiubing was also a half-step soul formation stage cultivator, but he had been defeated on the 77th level. Now the 80th floor was clearly another watershed. It seemed like it would be a bitter battle. Rumble! Suddenly, 5 figures with auras as vast as the sea condensed in the void. The divine intents of celestial immortals at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage were all enveloped by some kind of divine light, as if they were gods who had descended into the mortal world. They were noble, powerful, and intimidating. Enlin could even sense a haughty aura emanating from their bodies. 5 heaven immortals condensed with divine will began to pounce toward Enlin and the others. Enlin's opponent was a woman wielding a red ribbon. As soon as she pounced, she released dozens of ribbons, which wrapped around Enlin. The red-colored silk was all-encompassing, with earth, wind, water, and fire appearing within it. It was either filled with a piercingly cold murderous aura, or surrounded by condensed water. For a moment, Enlin felt as if he was surrounded by a flawless killing formation, and he had no way to deal with it. However, he quickly realized that this was just an illusion. As long as he had enough strength, there was nothing that could not be broken. A golden lotus flower appeared on his forehead as he faced the oncoming red ribbon. A golden light revolved around his fist, which was imbued with the power of the earth, and he punched forward with all his might. The terrifying power of the golden fist tore the red ribbon into shreds. The woman turned pale with fright, and she waved her red ribbon in front of her. Rumble! The golden light crashed down in front of the woman and exploded. The woman hurtled back in retreat amid a sea of red shrapnel. Huh? She blocked it? Now that's interesting. Enlin's eyes lit up. His previous opponents were far too unchallenging to him, as they were all insta-killed. This opponent was very powerful, and he could probably use it as a warm-up. The woman waved her slender arms, and as her lithe figure spun, a series of red ribbons suddenly soared into the sky. The ribbons revolved in the air, forming a series of sharp spiral spears. In that instant, a terrifying killing intent filled the entire space, as if the god of death had made his announcement. Blood silk killing spears. One spear after another was enshrouded in red energy, and it tore through the air before stabbing toward Enlin with devastating force. Divine inspection technique. Enlin's eyes suddenly turned snowy white, and all of the spears slowed down. They didn't actually slow down. It was just that his consciousness was highly focused, so he was able to see everything clearly. The trajectories of the spears, as well as the flaws in their attacks, were all laid bare for all to see. Enlin's body moved like a ghost, and the red spears crashed into the ground one after another, but none of them were able to strike his body. Enlin took advantage of this opportunity to quickly close in on the woman. The celestial immortal's expression shifted upon seeing this, and she was just about to unleash a defensive spell technique. At this moment, Enlin's fingertips were already flashing with lightning. Lightning manipulation technique, lightning amplification technique. Not only did he draw upon return to void stage golden void lightning, but he also activated the lightning amplification technique. A thick bolt of golden lightning exploded in the air before instantly striking the woman's head. Boom! Terrifying lightning energy exploded, and destructive lightning power flowed through the woman's body, making her shudder and show signs of crumbling. At this moment, Unlin had already appeared before her, and his golden fist fell upon her. An earth-shattering boom erupted, and the woman's body was pulverized. The battle finally drew to a conclusion. He turned toward the others to find that he was the first to finish his battle. Su Xiaolan wielded a long sword materialized from the holy vermilion flame, and she unleashed a series of dazzling sword slashes, quickly vanquishing the opposing celestial immortal. She was the second to pass the trial. Lu Qianhuan was next. She was still not using her sword. Instead, she was wielding her six-feathered staff, unleashing a series of powerful spell techniques that caught her opponent completely off guard. She sustained one wound after another before finally being blasted to death by golden light. Lu Qianhuan had reached level 87 last year, so Enlin didn't have anything to worry about. He turned toward Su Qianyun and Xianyuanqing. Both of them had only progressed to the half-step soul formation stage not long ago, so no matter how talented they were or how powerful their bloodlines were, they weren't all that powerful. As such, it was not going to be easy for them to win this battle. Su Qianyun's situation was slightly better than Big Brother Qing's. Her movement techniques were extremely agile, and she was like a moon rabbit as she constantly leaped around on the ground. Her jet-black hair danced in the wind like a waterfall, and her fair and delicate little hands slashed out streaks of pure white moonlight toward the enemy. Her opponent was a saber cultivator, and his attacks were peerlessly powerful. Each and every one of his attacks was powerful enough to split open a mountain. Unfortunately, his movement techniques weren't as fast as Su Qianyun's, so it looked like he was going to be worn down by Su Qianyun sooner or later. Enlin heaved a faint sigh of relief upon seeing this before turning toward Xianyuanqing. However, his expression shifted slightly at the sight of Big Brother Qing. He could see that Big Brother Qing was already on the back foot. Big Brother Qing's opponent was a powerful being who had cultivated his body to the extreme. His speed and power were both extremely fearsome, and he was relentlessly attacking Big Brother Qing, not giving him any chance to catch his breath. Big Brother Qing switched from offense to defense, and just as he was about to reach his limit, a cold light suddenly flashed through his eyes. Chapter 595. Looks like I have no choice but to use that technique. Xianyuanqing was getting more and more exhausted as the battle progressed, and he could only heave a resigned sigh in the end. Even though he was at the half-step soul formation stage, he had never used the power of his domain in battle, as it was very easy for him to lose control of his domain. However, he was only one step away from the Hall of Fame. He was being forced into a corner by a return-to-void stage celestial immortal, and if he didn't use his domain now, he would most likely be defeated. The celestial immortal took advantage of a gap in his defenses and launched a punch toward Xianyuanqing's opening. The force of the fist landing in the air was like a sound wave cannonball that shot out. A projection of a black and white fish suddenly appeared beneath Xianyuanqing's feet. At the same time, his eyes were as calm as still water, as if they contained all things in this world as a mystical power enshrouded his entire body. Boom! The fist was deflected. Before he could finish his sentence, Xianyuanqing's expression shifted as he yelled, "Look out!" His voice had only just fallen when a resounding boom erupted. A terrifying explosion swept through the entire Immortal Spirit Tower as boundless flames, devastating shockwaves, and destructive power erupted at the same time, making the entire space feel as if doomsday had arrived. Enlin was prepared, but he was still blasted to the ground by the terrifying explosion. Su Xiaolan was quite sensitive to flames, and she was able to instantly summon her flames to protect her body, thereby allowing her to be the least affected and only be knocked back a few steps by the shockwaves. The flames dissipated. Xian Yuan Cheng coughed uncontrollably, and his white robe was in tatters. His long, flowing hair had been charred black, and his handsome face was as black as charcoal. Where was his divine intent opponent? He had already been reduced to ashes. Wah! An aggrieved wail sounded. Su Qianyun's blue dress had also been charred black and tattered. Her fair and delicate skin had been scorched red, and her intricate little face had also turned black. White smoke billowed out of her mouth as she screamed. Xian Yuan. Lu Qianhuan had also been dealt a heavy blow. Her eyes were filled with rage as she glared at Xian Yuan Cheng with gritted teeth. Xian Yuan Cheng lowered his head in shame. I didn't control myself well. It's my fault. I'm sorry. He really didn't know that the spell technique would go out of control so quickly. The last time he sparred with Enlin, it clearly didn't go out of control so quickly. He was able to use the Tao of Myriad Spirit Tai Chi to divert most of the explosive energy during the explosion, but the others couldn't. Xian Yuan Cheng was very depressed. He did not know what had happened to him. He had actually comprehended a personal domain like the Tao. The combination of the myriad spirits and the explosion symbolized life and destruction, which was in line with the Taiji Tao. However, his explosions were more than 10,000 spirit. He had basically reached the point where he would explode. When he was excited, hopefully, he would be able to fix this flaw by the time he reached the soul formation stage. After the explosion, Su Qianyun immediately used a spell technique to conceal herself. She then used a body cleansing technique to clean herself and changed into a new set of clothes. Only then did she land the final blow on the divine intent, being closest to Big Brother Cheng, who was on the brink of death from the explosion. All of them had passed the trial on the 80th level of the Immortal Spirit Tower. The students outside the Immortal Spirit Tower were already in an uproar as countless people discussed excitedly among themselves. Classmate Xian Yuan Cheng is so handsome. Especially after he self-detonated, I'm extremely moved by his well-built muscles. A female student wore a starry-eyed expression. There were also some female students who had different opinions. How did my Adonis go from a handsome man to an explosive maniac? My Adonis! I can't accept this. A disappointed expression appeared on a male student's face. Why are Lu Qianhuan and Su Qianyun's clothes so good? Of course, there were also some students who were discussing cultivation. I felt like that melee combat immortal's fist technique was very compatible with my battle tyrant fist, and I was enlightened. There are so many supremely talented third-year students. Not only has Enlin made it into the Hall of Fame, but Su Xiaolan, Xian Yuan Cheng, and Su Qianyun have also made it into the Hall of Fame, and they're only in their third year. That's right. Wang Xuanzhan was so domineering back then, but he only made it into the Hall of Fame in his fourth year. They're way too powerful. Thank God we still have Lu Qianhuan. Otherwise, it would be a real tragedy for us to watch our juniors take on the trial. What do you guys think Lu Qianhuan will be able to pass this time? Within the Immortal Spirit Tower, Bai Zhong looked on at the 5 students with a weary expression. He didn't want to say anything more about the explosions just then, nor did he want to yell at them. Losing control again. If they were so bad *SS, why didn't they just go to heaven and clear the Immortal Spirit Tower? Bai Zhong had a lot of pent-up anger in his heart, and he had repeatedly said that he wouldn't do it again. However, when he made a mistake, it was always someone else who would take the blame. Considering the fact that Su Qianyun clearly had the upper hand in her battle against the Divine Intent Combat Immortals, Bai Zhong couldn't be bothered to deal with her Divine Intent Combat Immortals anymore. After all, it was quite tiring for him to repeat the same words every time he had to scold someone. Furthermore, they no longer had a chance to influence one another in the trials after the 80th level. Bai Zhong didn't waste any more time with words as he brought out 18 number badges. First of all, congratulations on making it into the Hall of Fame of the university. Next, these are the entry badges for levels 81 to 98. Due to the limitations on the number of Divine Intent combat immortals, you can only choose 3 different levels, and you can't choose the same level as everyone else. Now you can choose a level, and I'll let you choose the next one after passing the trial. Unlin asked with a curious expression, there are 99 levels in the Immortal Spirit Tower, why isn't there a 99th level badge? Bai Zhong harumphed coldly. If you want to reach the 99th level, you have to pass the 98th level first. Ever since the Immortal Spirit Tower was first opened, no one has ever been able to pass the 98th level. Don't be too ambitious, young man. Bai Zhong couldn't help but start lecturing everyone again. Everyone knew that they only had 3 chances. Each time they passed, they would be rewarded handsomely. In fact, they might even receive recognition from the Divine Intent Combat Immortals and receive an inheritance of a battle spell technique. If they failed on their first attempt, they would be teleported out of the Immortal Spirit Tower. Wouldn't that be a waste of their next 2 chances? Su Qianyun timidly chose level 81, while Xianyuan Cheng also wanted to test the waters and chose level 82. Lu Qianhuan picked herself up from where she had fallen, and she resolutely chose the 87th level. Su Xiaolan paused momentarily before picking up the badge for level 86. Unlin immediately picked up the badge for level 92 without any hesitation. Bai Zhong pursed his lips at the sight of Unlin's confident expression. Then I wish you all the best. He waved a sleeve through the air as he spoke, teleporting everyone to different levels of the tower. Chapter 596. On the 92nd level of the Immortal Spirit Tower, rays of sunlight penetrated the barrier and fell into the pagoda. Outside the pagoda was a bright blue sky with white clouds, but inside the pagoda, there was frost. Unlin looked at the gray-robed man 50 meters in front of him. His skin was pale, and his eyes were long and narrow. There was a cold full moon floating behind him, and within the coldness, there was a hidden killing intent. Unlin could sense that this man's aura had already reached the return to void final stage. Clearly, he was a top-notch celestial immortal who had comprehended the divine Tao. A faint smile appeared on the man's face, and he nodded as he said in a rather feeble voice, "Hello, I didn't think that such a stunning prodigy would appear on the university. You've reached the soul formation intermediate stage in your time at the university, so it's no wonder that you're able to reach the 92nd level. I am Fang Yi, and I walk the path of the frost moon." Unlin faltered slightly upon hearing this. "You can talk." Fang Yi nodded. "I've already stepped onto my own Tao, so my divine will can also be infused with some of my Tao's true intent, and it has its own consciousness. This is also the reason why I am able to impart my combat inheritance to you. Unfortunately, this is not a method to achieve longevity. There will come a time when it will wither away. Greetings, Senior. I am Unlin." Unlin bowed respectfully. Fang Yi smiled and nodded, "Very good. Then, little friend Unlin, can we begin? As long as you defeat me and beat me to my heart's content, I can consider teaching you a move or 2. Unlin's face twitched slightly. They were still talking nicely just now. Why did the situation suddenly change? However, he didn't waste any more time. He stepped forward, and the power of his body of the war god began to emanate from his body. This aura is so powerful, and it also has a kind of great perfection power. Fang Yi had a look of surprise on his face. He waved one hand, and the space within a radius of several hundred meters was suddenly filled with endless moonlight. The power of the moonlight was a faint white color. It was as if it had fused with the entire space, and could not be dispelled by external forces. Unlin felt a bone-chilling cold spread throughout his body. The power carried by the moonlight was high and indistinct, but it followed like a shadow. Unlin knew that he couldn't sit still and wait for death. He stretched out his wings of wind and pounced on Fang Yi. However, just as Unlin was about to make a move, a silver blade imbued with the power of death flashed through the air and struck his heart in the blink of an eye. Bang! That sharp light seemed to have hit something extremely hard, and it actually scattered like water. Fang Yi's expression changed, and the moon behind him shone brightly. However, at this moment, Enlin was already right in front of him. He activated his Earth Lotus Supreme skill to its fullest extent, and his fist was imbued with the power of the earth as he punched downward. Rumble! The golden ripples vibrated, and even the air began to distort. Fang Yi's barrier made of moonlight was instantly shattered. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backwards. Enlin was astonished. Divine intent battles could also throw up blood? Fang Yi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and looked at Enlin in shock. You're very strong. Who would have thought that a freak like you would appear in the celestial court? I'm going to use my most powerful technique now. He suddenly made a strange ancient seal with both hands as he spoke. The moon behind him suddenly split into 2, then into 4. It continued to split until the entire sky was filled with countless moons. A boundless chill surged through the air, suffocating everyone present. Divine Tao technique, myriad frost moon. Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this, and his legs turned to jelly. He had trypophobia. Just as the countless moons fell, a flame insignia appeared on Enlin's forehead, and a flaming feather fluttered beside him. He drew a bow with one hand and pointed his other hand at Fang Yi. The demonic star flame, great holy flame, setting moon flame, and heavenly void flame began to converge to form a long arrow. This was a spell technique that combined the Crimson God arrow and the 4 divine flames with the full power of the wings of true fire cultivation method. Boom, 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 Enlin's body was inundated by the boundless waves of moons. However, a Crimson God arrow with a head as bright as a star and a body as bright as the sun instantly pierced through the terrifying frosty moonlight. It left a trail in its wake before puncturing Fang Yi's heart. The moonlight dissipated, and Fang Yi stared at the hole in his heart with incredulity etched on his face. After a few seconds of silence, he came to his senses and murmured to himself, "I lost?" Moreover, he lost so cleanly? Enlin also appeared before him, and an even more incredulous scene unfolded. Even though Enlin's clothes were in tatters, his most powerful spell technique didn't leave even the slightest mark on his skin, as he was completely defenseless. Gasp! Fang Yi drew a sharp intake of breath. What kind of body is this? Enlin looked at Fang Yi's punctured heart and his unstable body, but he didn't answer Fang Yi's question. Instead, he scratched his head. Does this count as my win? Fang Yi's lips twitched. Of course, you've won this battle. The Celestial Court will be even more glorious in the future with such an outstanding talent like you. You're too kind, Senior. Enlin spoke with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. That battle spell technique inheritance. Oh, I won't be giving you my battle spell technique. Fang Yi waved his hand. Enlin's expression faltered upon hearing this. Why? He had clearly defeated Fang Yi, and he had done it in such a clean and efficient manner, so why wasn't there any inheritance? It's like this. I'm saying that I only shared my battle spell technique inheritance with you after you defeated me. Fang Yi pointed to his chest and continued, but you ended the battle in an instant. I didn't even get a chance to get high before I was defeated. I was like a real man for 3 seconds. How was that satisfying? Enlin's body swayed slightly, and he almost threw up a mouthful of blood. His mouth gaped open as if he had misheard Enlin. Too fast? Not satisfying? What kind of explanation was that? Wasn't this reason too fresh and out of the ordinary? Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, all of the students who were observing Enlin's battle were also dumbstruck. They could naturally hear the conversation between Fang Yi and Enlin. Hence, the mighty image of a top-tier celestial immortal was beginning to crumble. Is that something a top-tier celestial immortal should say? What the hell? The prodigy of the school didn't receive the inheritance after challenging the 92nd level because it was too fast. I feel bad for classmate Enlin for a minute. I want to vomit blood after hearing this reason. Looks like being too powerful isn't a good thing after all. The celestial immortal can't take it. Fang Yi felt a little better upon seeing the dejected expression on Enlin's face. With such a powerful body and such fearsome spell techniques, why would Enlin need his inheritance? It would be a waste of time anyway. After all, it was more about quality than quantity. Through their battle, he could tell that Enlin's spell techniques were clearly more powerful, so why would he waste his energy on Enlin? He might as well save his energy for his future students. Of course, he couldn't say this out loud. Otherwise, as a return to Void final stage celestial immortal, he would be completely humiliated. Fang Yi offered a comforting smile. Don't be disappointed, Mr. Enlin. You're very powerful, so you'll definitely receive a better inheritance in the future. I think you can challenge higher levels in the Immortal Spirit Tower, such as the 95th level, the 96th level. At this moment, Bai Zhong had already appeared before Enlin. Congratulations, student Enlin. You've successfully passed the 92nd level. Which level would you like to challenge next? He had also finished observing Enlin's battle, and he had a better understanding of Enlin's abilities. It was exactly because of this that the disdain in his heart completely vanished as he looked at Enlin with a hint of curiosity and anticipation in his eyes. I want to challenge the 98th level, Enlin replied without any hesitation. He felt like he was being too low-key. Why would he choose the 92nd level for no reason? He had worked so hard to defeat a small boss, only to receive no rewards. If that was the case, he might as well have chosen the most difficult level from the very beginning. Bai Zhong. Alright. Chapter 597. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, all of the students erupted into an uproar upon hearing that Enlin was going to challenge level 98. My god, Enlin is going to level 98? How many years has it been since something like this happened? Even Wang Xuanzhan only managed to pass through level 93 before being forced to retreat at level 94. Now, Enlin is going to jump straight to level 98? Hee. God and defeated senior student Wang with a single finger. Will he have a problem challenging level 98? This is a battle that only happens once in 1,000 years. If he wins, he might be able to break the school record. To be able to witness the birth of a historic event on campus here, I feel that there is one more thing worth remembering in my life of cultivation on campus. Many of the students were getting a little excited upon hearing this as they stared at the white-robed figure on the screen with scorching light in their eyes. Of course, there were also some students who were spectating other battles. For example, a group of female students were watching Xianyuan Cheng's battle with scorching light in their eyes, even though Xianyuan Cheng wasn't battling. That's right, he wasn't battling yet. He was merely chatting. A beautiful female celestial immortal with a crimson whip in her hand was looking at the man before her with a speechless expression. She heaved a forlorn sigh. Have you said enough? Xianyuan Cheng shook his head. No, Senior Shu Yu. Can't you tell me how this immortal spirit tower works? You must be in a lot of pain, right? Shu Yu's face convulsed slightly. No, I'm very happy. How can you be happy? The divine intent that has been infused into the Tao realm basically has a wisp of your consciousness attached to it, which means that this divine intent is also you, Senior. Xianyuan Cheng took a deep breath as a determined expression appeared on his face. I'm a cultivator of the Tao of myriad spirit Tai Chi, so you won't be able to fool me. Senior, you've been trapped in a tower for so long. Are you really happy with a life like this? I'm happy to be able to contribute to the celestial court, Shu Yu replied. No, you're not happy. I can see the confusion in your eyes, Xianyuan Cheng replied with conviction. Shu Yu. I really am. You're really not happy, Xianyuan Cheng said seriously. Shu Yu, If it weren't for the fact that this student was handsome and that he was doing it for her own good, Shu Yu would have lashed him with her whip without a second word. So, what exactly do you want? Shu Yu said weakly. I'm quite knowledgeable about the Tao of all spirit. I can release you from purgatory, but I need your cooperation, Xian Yuan Qing said seriously. Shu Yu's eyes darkened. Are you trying to kill me? Xian Yuan Qing shook his head. That's not it. I'm just sending you out of this world, so that you can truly be liberated and return to the myriad spirits to be reincarnated once more. You're different from the ancient sages below the 80th level. If your consciousness remains here, you won't be able to truly enter the cycle of reincarnation. Shu Yu rolled her eyes. So, you're F***king trying to destroy me? Xian Yuan Qing smiled and said, Isn't it good to start a new life? A life where you can find happiness, a life where you can experience the beauty of all things. Sunlight streamed into the tower from outside, shining upon Xian Yuan Qing's exquisitely handsome features. His eyes were as dazzling as the stars in the sky, and his smile was as mesmerizing as the warm spring sun. That instant smile was so beautiful that it made people want to keep it. Shu Yu was completely dumbstruck as she stared at the man before her. She had wanted to say that this man was F***king retarded. However, she couldn't bring herself to say that after seeing such a warm and sincere smile, outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, all of the female fans screamed at the sight of this smile, and the coarse male voice could be heard among the screams. But I've already sworn a vow to survive in the Immortal Spirit Tower as a divine intent warrior. Shu Yu felt like her mind was in a mess. So what? I can still help you transcend as long as you cooperate with me. A warm smile appeared on Xian Yuan Qing's face as he continued, I still think that it's unreasonable to leave the consciousness of an immortal here. Even though it would be of great help to the students of the Celestial Court, there are many better alternatives. Why sacrifice the happiness of so many revered celestial immortals? Shu Yu listened blankly. There was not a single hint of falsehood in the man's expression or tone. She knew that he was truly looking out for her. I'm very weak right now, so I can only do my best to help everyone find happiness. Yes, this is only happiness in the narrow sense of the word, but as long as you agree, as long as you want to do it, then I will do my best to help you. Perhaps this is a way for me to respect life. Xian Yuan Qing's words struck Shu Yu's heart like a sledgehammer. How many years had it been since she had done nothing but fight? Aside from fighting, she could only stay on the 82nd level every day and look out at the blue sky and white clouds in the distance. To her, the world outside the Immortal Spirit Tower was a world that she could only dream of. Perhaps she would continue to fight like this forever. She would continue to fight like a machine, operating in a fixed pattern until the wisp of her consciousness could no longer be contained within her divine intent. Was she happy? For the sake of the Celestial Court, she felt like she had a responsibility. However, it was still the same question. Was she happy? There was a man standing before her, and instead of fighting, he was telling her that she was not happy. This man seemed to have changed her unchanging habit of fighting as soon as they met. Xian Yuan Qing was like a ray of sunlight, bringing a different hue to her gray life. Do you want to be free? Do you want to start afresh? If you're tired of it, if you want to be free, I can help you. Xian Yuan Qing extended a hand toward Shu Yu, the hand that gave her the courage to make a change. Tears welled up in Shu Yu's eyes as she stared blankly at the man before her. Was this what it felt like to be cared for by someone? How many years had it been? She was already dead, but she was once again experiencing what it felt like to be alive. A vibrant smile suddenly appeared on Shu Yu's face, and it was especially vibrant and enchanting under the sunlight. Xian Yuan Qing, you're such an interesting man. If I were still alive, perhaps I would pursue you instead. The woman's voice was as gentle as a spring breeze, and it was tinged with a hint of affection. Xian Yuan Qing faltered upon hearing this, and his hand froze on the spot, unsure of what to do. Was this a confession of love? How did things get to this point? How did things get so out of hand? Right at this moment, the woman's hand had already reached out toward Xianyuan Qing and gripped tightly onto his hand. She could feel the warmth emanating from the man before her, and it was a feeling that she could rely on him. Shu Yu took a deep breath as a vibrant smile appeared on her face. Xianyuan Qing, help me! I want to start afresh. Chapter 598. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, countless eyes were staring intently at Xianyuan Qing's screen. What could they do? This was simply far too unimaginable. Thus, after a series of cries of surprise, Xianyuan Qing's battle screen instantly attracted everyone's attention. Oh, it couldn't really be called a battle screen as there was no battle at all. Holy F***ck. What the hell happened? Why is Xianyuan Qing shaking hands with that woman? All of the students who had just turned their attention to Xianyuan Qing's battle screen were dumbstruck. Could it be that what I'm watching is a fake trial? What the hell is with this friendly and harmonious scene? Does anyone know what exactly happened? Can you explain it to me? Many of the students who had just turned their attention to Xianyuan Qing's battle screen were eager to find an explanation. However, the students who had witnessed the entire process were not in the mood to provide an explanation as they were also digesting what they had just seen. It took time for them to come to terms with something as inconceivable as this. Is Xianyuan Qing really that bad *SS? He can even touch the divine intent of a mighty figure. Congratulations to the male and female guests for successfully holding hands. They can go on their honeymoon now. A student quipped. Wah! My Prince Charming, how could you do this? How could you choose her? A female student's heart was shattered. Sigh, let's give them all our blessings. To be honest, why do I feel like Xianyuan Qing's words make a lot of sense? I also sympathize with the mighty figures who have chosen to remain in the Immortal Spirit Tower. Even though they have sworn vows, I think we should give them a chance to leave. Many students chimed in with their sentiments upon hearing this. Of course, there were also some students who had different opinions and felt like they should consider things from the perspective of the Celestial Court. Within the Immortal Spirit Tower, Xianyuan Qing was also a little dazed as he held onto Shu Yu's hand. However, he quickly came to his senses and released her hand with a warm smile on his face. Senior Shu Yu, please circulate your cultivation method according to my instructions, and I'll separate your true intent of Tao from your divine intent. Shu Yu nodded lightly and stared at Xianyuan Qing. At this moment, Bai Zhong, who had just sent the Restless and Lin to the 98th level, suddenly sensed something and focused his spiritual sense on the 82nd level. If he hadn't seen it, he wouldn't have known, but the moment he saw it, he nearly fainted. F***ck. Xianyuan Qing wanted to send a mighty figure from the Immortal Spirit Tower to the afterlife? Most importantly, that powerful being didn't resist at all? What the hell was going on? Were all this batch of students so terrifying? Not only did he possess insane combat prowess, but he even wanted to send a mighty figure from the Immortal Spirit Tower to the afterlife. Bai Zhong was extremely flustered and exhausted. He didn't dare to make the decision. Even the vice principal of Yuhua couldn't make the decision. He looked at the expectant and yearning expression on Shu Yu's face, and stopped himself from immediately stopping them. He chose to use the voice transmission talisman to contact the Master of the Celestial Court, the Celestial Monarch. Perhaps only the Celestial Emperor was qualified to handle this matter. The voice transmission talisman was quickly connected. Bai Zhong relayed the general situation to the Celestial Arch, following which every second felt like a year. After about 10 seconds, a sigh of relief sounded from the other end of the voice transmission talisman. Forget it, let's leave it to fate. The answer was very clear. It was telling Bai Zhong not to interfere in this matter, and to let Xianyuan Qing and Shu Yu handle it themselves. Shu Yu closed her eyes, and her entire body was enshrouded by a white light. A massive yin-yang diagram revolved incessantly on the ground, reversing the flow of all living beings. Xianyuan Qing activated his Tao of myriad spirit Tai Chi to its fullest extent, and the power of his consciousness was also activated to its maximum extent as a burst of light imbued with the power of reversal flooded the surrounding space. Shu Yu felt as if her body had become very light, as if some kind of shackle had been broken. However, this kind of action was bound to result in backlash. Xianyuan Cheng's eyes were bloodshot, and blood was flowing from the corners of his lips. However, he was completely oblivious to this as he continued to maintain his spell technique. Shu Yu seemed to have sensed something, and she opened her eyes, only to be greeted by the sight of Xianyuan Qing unleashing his full power. Her heart jolted violently as an indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. Xianyuan Qing, you, don't say anything. Focus your mind. Xianyuan Qing yelled this out in a loud voice. Shu Yu took a deep glance at Xianyuan Qing before closing her eyes and continuing to activate her cultivation technique. Boom! The entire space on the 82nd level began to tremor violently. A vast and boundless power began to emanate forth. This power was soft but also ferocious, and it was as if a dragon were dancing in the air, creating a beautiful yet breathtaking sight. This was the true intent of Shu Yu's divine Tao. However, this power blossomed like fireworks, and the dazzling light only lasted for an extremely short instant before disappearing into thin air. An exquisitely beautiful celestial immortal landed in front of Xianyuan Qing with tears in her eyes as she embraced the man before her tightly. "Thank you. Thank you so much." A smile finally appeared on Xianyuan Qing's face as he sensed the woman's scorching emotions. He patted the woman's back with a hand that was trembling from overexertion. "I wish you happiness in the future, hero of the celestial court." Shu Yu closed her eyes as 2 streams of tears flowed down her cheeks. "I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but you were the one who illuminated the final moments of my life." The woman's body slowly dissipated into specks of light. An indistinct voice reverberated in Xianyuan Cheng's ears. "If there really is a next life, I hope I'll be able to meet you again." Xianyuan Qing nodded with a smile as he stared at the slowly dissipating figure before collapsing to the ground in exhaustion. In order to break free from the binding of the vow, he had used up all of the power in his body, and he had even overexerted himself. Now, he had reached his limit and couldn't hold on any longer. Shu Yu left. Xianyuan Cheng's vision darkened as he completely fainted. A few seconds later, a white mist materialized. Bai Zhong appeared before Xianyuan Qing and looked down at the man on the ground with a complex expression. Even now, he was still unable to understand what the man before him was doing. However, after hearing Shu Yu's words, he began to understand some things. "Sigh, they're still sentient beings after all. I've overlooked their true feelings. Perhaps what you're doing really is the right thing." Bai Zhong heaved a forlorn sigh before waving a sleeve to teleport Xianyuan Cheng's body out of the tower. Then, he muttered in a low voice, "What kind of monsters are these? This won't do. I have to go and see the others. I hope they don't cause any more trouble for me." Meanwhile, outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, several thousand students felt like they had just watched a blockbuster movie, and all of them were feeling a little dazed and dreamy. Xianyuan Qing freed a celestial immortal? He's actually able to pull off such a flashy move? This is probably the first time something like this has happened since the opening of the Immortal Spirit Tower, right? As expected of the most exceptional prodigy of the Celestial Court. This is going to go down in the history books. That's so touching. I'm rooting for this Qingyu couple. Tui. Xianyuan Qing is mine. Xianyuan Qing was also forced to stop on the 82nd level because of this incident. What a pity that he lost all of his rewards and inheritances. There's too much of a difference in their thinking. You might think it's a pity, but Xianyuan Qing doesn't think it's a pity at all. He had a smile on his face when he fainted. Hey look! Lu Qianhuan has already defeated the Celestial Immortal on the 87th level. Chapter 599. As a glorious guardian of the Forbidden Area, Baizhong's duty was to protect the Forbidden Area and maintain its normal operation, making it an inviolable sacred domain in the school. In the past, he had always been able to do his job very well. However, the Immortal Spirit Tower trial had been very unpredictable. The sheer power of Enlin and Su Xiaolan was proof that there was a major flaw in the Immortal Spirit Tower trial system. Xian Yuancheng's act of releasing Shu Yu from purgatory was further proof that the Immortal Spirit Tower was far too lacking in humanized management. Baizhong's heart felt very tired. Then, he felt a sense of bravery after knowing his shame. Perhaps he should look at these students with gratitude. These students were the ones who had pointed out the shortcomings of the Immortal Spirit Tower with the naked truth. Lu Qianhuan had already defeated her opponent on the 87th level and obtained the Celestial Immortal's star-shattering hand. Baizhong appeared before Lu Qianhuan and offered sincere congratulations. She was only at the half-step soul formation stage, but she had already passed level 87. This was definitely the first time in the history of the Immortal Spirit Tower that someone had done so, and this was a testament to how powerful this woman was. Lu Qianhuan pondered for a moment before choosing the 91st level. Baizhong didn't want to interfere, but he couldn't help but grimace at the sight of Lu Qianhuan's badge, and he began to persuade her patiently. He said that one should be down to earth when doing things and not bite off more than one can chew. It was already very impressive for a half-step soul formation cultivator to pass through level 87. From now on, the correct choice would be to continue going through the levels and obtain 2 more inheritances. However, Lu Qianhuan immediately waved her hands and told him not to meddle in the affairs of young people. Everyone was an individual with their own ideas and dreams. There was a generation gap between the elderly and the young. Too much interference would harm them, so it was better to let them make their own choices. The frog in the well cannot speak to the sea, because it is confined to the void. The summer insect cannot speak to the ice, because it is confined to the time. The song scholar cannot speak to the Tao, because it is confined to the teachings. Senior Baizhong, I'm not insulting you. I just can't think of a better way to express my feelings, so I'm using this as a general explanation for the generation gap. Lu Qianhuan was still going on, and Baizhong was almost completely dumbstruck by her lecture. Was this a curse? This must be a curse, right? Shouldn't he be the one lecturing Lu Qianhuan? Why was it Lu Qianhuan lecturing him instead? I can't afford to offend them. I can't afford to offend them. None of these people are easy to deal with. Baizhong immediately teleported Lu Qianhuan to the 91st level, but he was still mulling over Lu Qianhuan's words. For some reason, he suddenly felt a little sad. On the 86th level, a pure white sword slashed through the void, slicing a man shrouded in black mist in half. Boundless holy vermilion flames of the holy vermilion bird were imbued within the sword projection, incinerating the void and reducing the body to ashes. Very good. Su Xiaolan, you have successfully defeated me. Next, I will give you the inheritance of the sky poison mist. A man's shadow appeared in the void again and said coldly. Su Xiaolan took a couple of steps back with a conflicted and awkward look on her face. Senior Ling Hujuan, see, can I refuse? Ling Hujuan's pupils contracted as an expression of incredulity appeared on his face. You're going to refuse my inheritance? Su Xiaolan nodded with a determined expression on her face. It's actually like this. My bloodline primarily revolves around fire and lightning, which are the bane of all sky poison mist. As such, there's no way for the 2 powers to fuse together. Even if I were to obtain the inheritance, it would be very difficult for me to master it. Ling Hujuan's body swayed slightly, and his heart suddenly throbbed with pain. That seemed to be the case, but he was a high and mighty celestial immortal in his past life. Countless people begged him for guidance, but now, someone was rejecting his inheritance? Did he not care about his pride? Bai Zhong hurriedly appeared on the 86th level upon sensing the celestial immortal's violent emotional fluctuations. Congratulations to Su Xiaolan for passing the trial on the 86th level, Bai Zhong announced with a smile. Thank you. Senior Ling Hujuan, I'm really sorry. Su Xiaolan bowed in apology again. Bai Zhong wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead as he tried to smooth things over. You don't have any affinity with Senior Ling Hujuan, so there's nothing you can do about it. Senior Ling Hujuan is a magnanimous person, so he won't hold it against you. Ling Hujuan's expression eased slightly as he turned to Bai Zhong. I naturally won't hold it against you, my little friend. It's just that some people don't give their trial takers some sort of direction to choose from, right? What kind of trial is there, what kind of inheritance is there, and you can't even make such a simple match? Ling Hujuan's figure slowly disappeared, leaving behind a dumbstruck Bai Zhong. Was I being scolded? Bai Zhong felt as if he was about to throw up a mouthful of blood. So this was all his fault? He had wanted to give Su Xiaolan a good lecture, but he had no choice but to swallow his words now. An awkward smile appeared on Bai Zhong's face as he pulled out his badge. Now you can choose the next level. Su Xiaolan looked at the badge and pondered for a moment before picking up the number 95. Bai Zhong's face convulsed, and he wanted to say something, but he stopped himself. Su Xiaolan was only at the soul formation initial stage, but Wang Xuanzhan was also at the soul formation initial stage. Even he was defeated on the 94th level, so how could Su Xiaolan be more powerful than Wang Xuanzhan? She still had 2 more chances, so why was she being so impulsive? In the end, he gave up on trying to dissuade her. So be it. Letting his student fail once and suffer some setbacks would also be beneficial to her growth. Su Xiaolan went to the 94th level. At this moment, Su Qianyun also successfully passed through the 81st level. Su Qianyun received the inheritance of the Swift Water Steps, and she was elated to see Bai Zhong choose the 83rd level. Bai Zhong was extremely relieved to see this, and he was almost moved to tears. He had finally met someone who was on the same wavelength as him. Su Qianyun really didn't have any ambitions or goals. All she wanted to do was collect inheritances in a safe and secure manner. Every inheritance she could obtain would be one more reward, and she would go as far as she could with a happy heart. She didn't even think about challenging levels that were too powerful. On the 91st level, sword intent swept through the entire space, and frost and snow covered the entire space. A celestial immortal wielded a jade-green longsword, and his sword projection rippled through the air in a peerlessly intricate manner, leaving a series of dazzling trajectories in the air. The Tao intent imbued within the sword projection was like dripping water piercing through rocks, and it even tore a series of cracks into the domain of extreme frost. Lu Qianhuan was completely suppressed. She held a frosty longsword that was materialized from water vapor in her hand, and she was completely unable to find an opportunity to retaliate in the face of the boundless jade-green sword projections. Exceptional sword immortal potential, ancient sword Tao physique, and perfected domain intent realm. Why aren't you at the soul formation stage? The man wielding the jade-green longsword turned his body, and the Tao intent of the water drop fell along with his longsword. The sword projection was imbued with terrifying penetrative power, and it instantly pierced through Lu Qianhuan's domain of extreme frost before striking her body. Lu Qianhuan's body tumbled to the ground as if she had been struck by a heavy blow, and she panted heavily. Then why don't you dare to take that final step? What kind of obsession has made you stop in your tracks? The man made his way toward Lu Qianhuan with a perplexed expression on his face. If you're going to fight, then fight. What's with all the nonsense? Lu Qianhuan gritted her teeth as she stood up and pointed her frosty longsword at the approaching man. Her slender figure stood tall and firm, and her aura was intimidating and frosty, as if she were a peerless divine sword herself. In the Tao of the sword, one can become an immortal through obsession. If you can't do that, Then why don't you use your own sword to completely sever it? I'm sure you can do that as well, right? The man ignored Lu Qianhuan's scolding and spoke in an unhurried manner. Lu Qianhuan's body trembled upon hearing this, and she stood rooted to the spot in a daze. Sometimes, when one was lost in a daze, one sentence from someone with a discerning eye would be enough to wake them up. Perhaps she had thought of this method before, but her subconscious mind would automatically ignore it. But now, a person had appeared, rudely parted the dark clouds above her head, and pointed out an extremely obvious path. She had no choice but to consider it. After a few seconds, a sweet smile appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face. All right, since you've said that, then I'll make a breakthrough for you to see. Chapter 600. A faint smile appeared on the Sword Immortal's face as he sheathed his longsword behind his back. He stood silently nearby, not bothering Lu Qianhuan in the slightest. He was suave and elegant, like a gentleman. Lu Qianhuan's bright purple eyes became as still as snow upon seeing this. In that instant, she discarded all her emotions and entered a state of absolute forgetfulness. Forget it all. Cut off everything. Forgetting is the best release. Boom. In an instant, the wind and clouds within a 10-mile radius changed, and dark clouds covered the entire sky. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, countless students stared up at the rippling screen with dumbstruck expressions. After Xianyuan Qing, their classmate Lu Qianhuan had once again shocked them to the core. Rumble bolts of lightning imbued with terrifying power erupted within the dark clouds, as if they were threatening to tear the heavens apart. So classmate Lu Qianhuan is going to transcend her tribulation? Transcending her tribulation in the middle of battle? That's awesome, my goddess. I was just saying that Goddess Lu was being too aggressive and that it was unwise for her to choose such a high level. But now, it looks like she's going to make a breakthrough on the spot. I'm truly impressed. Lu Qianhuan's aptitude is truly exceptional. The scale of the lightning clouds this time is comparable to the scale of Enlin's tribulation transcendence. However, there's one thing that's different. The lightning in the sky is normal tribulation lightning, not golden void lightning. Just as the students were discussing spiritedly among themselves, Enlin, Su Qianyun, and Su Xiaolan also seemed to have sensed something, and they turned to look out the window with astonished expressions on their faces. Bai Zhongcai was elated over Su Qianyun's breakthrough for a minute before he was greeted by the sight of the dark clouds outside. This aura. Could it be that someone is transcending their tribulation? He unleashed his divine sense throughout heaven and earth, upon which his expression shifted. So Lu Qianhuan is transcending her tribulation? As expected of one of the most supremely talented prodigies of the university to be able to attain enlightenment in the midst of battle and take that final step. Congratulations! Bai Zhongcai was quite elated when he suddenly realized something, and his expression shifted drastically. Holy F***CK. She was making her breakthrough in the Immortal Spirit Tower, so the lightning tribulation was going to strike the Immortal Spirit Tower. Bai Zhong knew that once a cultivator entered the tribulation transcendent state, they must not be disturbed by external forces. Otherwise, the lightning tribulation would become increasingly violent. Rumble. An earth-shattering roar accompanied by an extremely dazzling flash of blue light. An extremely thick bolt of lightning was already hurtling toward Lu Qianhuan within the Immortal Spirit Tower, but it was kept at bay by the roof of the Immortal Spirit Tower, upon which countless bolts of lightning exploded forth. Rumble. Due to the obstruction, the lightning in the sky became even more violent and terrifying. What do I do? What do I do? Bai Zhong was so anxious that cold sweat trickled down his back. Lu Qianhuan's tribulation transcendence couldn't be interrupted or disturbed. However, if this continued, the lightning tribulation would be blocked, and the power of the lightning tribulation would become more and more terrifying. In the end, the terrifying tribulation lightning would blast a hole through the Immortal Spirit Tower, and Lu Qianhuan would be reduced to dust as she was unable to withstand the power of the tribulation lightning. Lu Qianhuan's eyelashes trembled lightly, and her face paled as if she had also realized this. Back when she took that final step, it was as if everything was going according to plan, and she didn't have to think too much about it. Now that she thought about it, she realized that she didn't seem to have the right timing, location, or the right people. Recklessly transcending a tribulation like this was far too irrational. Perhaps she really was going to be screwed. Bai Zhong immediately withdrew the defensive spell formations around the Immortal Spirit Tower, thereby removing all of the restrictions on Lu Qianhuan's power. This meant that Lu Qianhuan's power had returned to its original level, and she could use all of her treasures. However, this was still not enough to resolve the issue of the Tribulation Lightning. The Immortal Spirit Tower was a high-rank immortal tool, and it was constructed from an extremely sturdy material. If the Tribulation Lightning had already been enhanced to the point where it could pierce through the Immortal Spirit Tower, then how was Lu Qianhuan's body going to be able to withstand it? The male sword immortal's brows furrowed slightly as he slashed an extremely sharp sword projection toward the roof of the Immortal Spirit Tower. Boom! The sword projection exploded, only to find that it couldn't even pierce through the barrier between the 91st and 92nd levels. That made sense. He only had a wisp of his divine intent, so there was no way he could break through the high-rank immortal tool Immortal Spirit Tower. Bai Zhong, hurry up and come out! The male sword immortal suddenly yelled. A white-robed elderly man hurriedly appeared with a voice transmission talisman in his hand. Kong Mohan, you knew that Lu Qianhuan was in the tower, so why didn't you stop her from making her breakthrough? Bai Zhong asked. Kong Mohan's face convulsed slightly as he confessed, I was the one who encouraged her to take the final step as I couldn't bear to see such a good seedling being trapped by her obsession, Bai Zhong. So he wasn't trying to stop Lu Qianhuan. Instead, he was encouraging Lu Qianhuan to do this. Bai Zhong was extremely depressed. It was one thing for the trial takers to screw him over, but now they were even trying to screw him over with their divine intent? Kong Mohan was a renowned sword immortal across the entire continent, and he was also one of the most powerful sword immortal instructors. It looked like his occupational disease was acting up again, and he was unable to control himself. Let's not talk about that for now. Our top priority right now is to figure out how to help Lu Qianhuan overcome this ordeal, Kong Mohan urged in an urgent voice. Bai Zhong heaved a forlorn sigh. The Immortal Spirit Tower has already taken root here, so it can't be moved. Lu Qianhuan's lightning clouds have already taken shape, so she can't move them. Otherwise, she will suffer a backlash from the heavenly Tao. I've already told the Celestial Dharch about this, and he's on his way here. We have no choice but to use brute force to disperse the lightning clouds. How could that be? No, that would affect her Tao foundation. If we forcibly disperse the lightning clouds, her next tribulation transcendence would be hundreds, even thousands of times more difficult. A remorseful expression appeared on Kong Mohan's face as he shook his head. A thought then seemed to occur to him, and he asked in a panicked voice, then why don't we just break through this Immortal Spirit Tower? We can break through from the 99th level to here and open up a passageway. Bai Zhong shook his head in resignation. If we do that, the spirit-gathering energy of the Immortal Spirit Tower will disappear, and all of you will die. All of your divine intents will disappear as well. The Celestial Dharch probably won't make that choice. Kong Mohan's body swayed slightly. It's all my fault. Lu Qianhuan seemed to have heard their conversation, and her heart stirred slightly. Boom! Another extremely thick bolt of lightning crashed into the top of the Immortal Spirit Tower, causing the entire tower to tremor violently. On the 98th level, Anlin felt as if he had completely recovered his strength, and he seemed to have understood something. He looked at his divine intents, then at the Immortal Spirit Tower, which had already deactivated its defensive formation, before finally turning his gaze outside the window. I'm sorry, Senior, but I have more important things to do. His body transformed into a cloud of white mist before flying out the window. The barrier around the immortal spirit tower had been shattered by the realm-piercing nail, and he appeared outside the immortal spirit tower atop his brick. This tribulation lightning. Is Lu Qianhuan about to make a breakthrough? He looked up at the increasingly fearsome tribulation lightning before flying toward the 91st level without any hesitation. A dazzling red light flashed past, and the barrier around the immortal spirit tower was pierced through again. Bai Zhong and Kong Mohan were both given a fright upon seeing this. "Enlin, why are you here?" Bai Zhong was shocked. "What are you trying to do?" Kong Mohan asked in a cautious voice. Boom! At this moment, an extremely thick bolt of divine lightning fell from the sky with extremely terrifying might. Enlin pointed a finger up into the sky, and lightning flashed on his fingertip as he flicked it upward. The bolt of divine lightning suddenly curved before descending upon Enlin like a water snake before crashing down upon Lu Qianhuan. A resounding boom erupted alongside the explosive power of the lightning. Lu Qianhuan let loose a muffled groan as her body was enshrouded by countless arcs of lightning, and her body swayed slightly. The lightning manipulation technique worked. Enlin heaved a sigh of relief. "Why am I here?" "I'm here to help Lu Qianhuan transcend her tribulation, of course." Chapter 601. Within the immortal spirit tower, Su Xiaolan and Su Qianyun had also ceased their battle. After recovering their strength, they also broke through the protective walls of the immortal spirit tower before flying out through the windows. They were then greeted by the sight of Enlin drawing lightning toward Lu Qianhuan. Thousands of students also let loose cries of surprise. "My God! Classmate Enlin can control tribulation lightning? Didn't you know? Godin was able to control even the golden void lightning Kirin during his tribulation transcendence, so how could he have any problems controlling a normal bolt of divine lightning? I've only heard rumors in the past, so I didn't really believe them. Now that the truth is right before my eyes, I really have no choice but to believe it. The tamer of divine lightning truly lives up to his reputation." Phew! With Enlin around, Lu Qianhuan should be able to transcend her tribulation safely. That's right. I'm thinking that if we have Enlin to protect us when we transcend our tribulations in the future, wouldn't we be a lot safer? This is a godlike cheat for tribulation transcendence. Stop dreaming. This cheat is indeed real, but are you sure you can download it? Can't I do it with my beauty? Are you more beautiful than Goddess Su Xiaolan or Goddess Lu Qianhuan? Some of the male students couldn't bear to listen to this any longer. Meanwhile, within the immortal spirit tower, Bai Zhong and Kong Mohan both stared blankly at Enlin. Was he controlling tribulation lightning just then? I'm not dreaming, am I? Bai Zhong felt as if he were hallucinating due to his old age. Boom! Another bolt of divine lightning fell, and Enlin pointed a finger toward Lu Qianhuan. The bolt of lightning crashed toward Lu Qianhuan's body like a series of scintillating lightning snakes, which continued to destroy and refine her body. This was a form of rebirth in the midst of destruction. A soul formation stage body had to be born from tribulation lightning. His name is Enlin, right? Who would have thought that such a supremely talented prodigy would appear in our celestial court? Kong Mohan stared at Enlin with a scorching light in his eyes. If it had been tens of thousands of years earlier, he would have definitely taken Enlin as his disciple. Furthermore, he wanted to take him in as his personal disciple and teach him everything he knew. Just the fact that he was able to face the lightning tribulation on his own was enough to win Kong Mohan over. "Senior Lu, don't worry. I'm here, so don't worry." Up in the sky, the power of the heavenly lightning was becoming more and more terrifying, but Enlin's voice was extremely firm and steady. This was a promise. Lu Qianhuan's brows gradually relaxed as a hint of a smile appeared on her face. Yes, there was still Enlin outside. For some reason, Lu Qianhuan's heart began to relax. What she needed to do now was to circulate her mental cultivation method to temper her body, focus her mind, and stabilize and perfect her personal domain. That was all. There were a total of 49 bolts of tribulation lightning for soul formation stage cultivators, and Lu Qianhuan's tribulation lightning was quite normal. Aside from the fact that the immortal spirit tower was making it more powerful, there was nothing out of the ordinary about it. And Lin felt like at this rate, Lu Qianhuan still had a very good chance of successfully transcending her tribulation. Boom, boom, boom. The divine lightning continued to fall, and Enlin used his lightning manipulation technique to deflect the bolts of lightning through the window before striking Lu Qianhuan. Everything was progressing in an orderly manner. In the air above the immortal spirit tower, spatial fluctuations proliferated forth, immediately following which a graceful man in a yellow robe with a subdued aura appeared. He took a glance at the surging lightning clouds in the sky before turning to Enlin, who was still controlling the tribulation lightning. He took a deep breath and murmured to himself, "He really can control tribulation lightning. This man was none other than the Celestial Dharch, the Celestial Dharch." His appearance didn't attract anyone's attention. In reality, as long as he didn't want anyone to see him, no one would be able to notice his presence. "Looks like I won't have to do anything this time." A faint smile appeared on the Celestial Thearch's face, but he didn't leave. Instead, he looked on with interest at the scenes unfolding before him. Su Xiaolan and Su Qianyun stood on their flying swords some distance away to create a safe distance. Su Qianyun's dreamy blue eyes widened as she stared at Enlin with astonishment. Who would have thought that classmate Enlin would be able to control other people's tribulation lightning? "I'll have to ask classmate Enlin for help when I transcend my tribulation in the future." She turned to Su Xiaolan with a cautious expression as she spoke. "You don't mind, do you?" Su Xiaolan couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of Su Qianyun's nervous expression. "Why would I mind? We're all good friends, aren't we? Besides, he's nobody to me, so why are you asking for my opinion?" A sheepish smile appeared on Su Qianyun's face. "Because everyone says that you and classmate Enlin are Dao partners to be." Su Xiaolan's expression remained stoic, but there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. She was clearly not averse to being referred to as Dao partners to be. Bolts of divine lightning fell one after another. Enlin unleashed his lightning manipulation technique over and over again, and the tribulation lightning became more and more powerful. He was finally beginning to show signs of strain. A human's power wasn't limitless, and there was bound to be fatigue and overexertion after using the same spell technique too many times. Thankfully, the tribulation lightning was about to conclude. She had already transcended 40 of the 49 bolts of tribulation lightning. She had already completed her body refinement and divine focus, and she was also nearing the end of perfecting her domain. However, right at this moment, an extremely terrifying intense soared into the heavens. All living beings within a radius of over 50 kilometers were struck by a frosty sensation. Bai Zhong and Kong Mohan turned to Lu Qianhuan with astonishment on their faces. Even the Celestial Thearch's expression shifted upon seeing this. Kong Mohan was a little incredulous. "The ancient sword Dao physique has been awakened?" Lu Qianhuan suddenly opened her eyes at this moment, and her aura soared explosively. The true intent of the sword flashed through her purple eyes, making her appear as if she were a paramount sword lord. In that instant, the swords of the thousands of students outside the immortal spirit tower began to ring in unison. Even the green longsword in Kong Mohan's hand began to tremble uncontrollably. Once the ancient sword Dao physique was unleashed, all swords would submit to it. Rumble, the lightning in the sky began to converge to form a lightning sword that threatened to slice apart heaven and earth. "Is this sword tribulation lightning?" Kong Mohan murmured to himself. "Who would have thought that I would be witnessing a legendary tribulation lightning? Only supremely talented swordsmen can manifest divine lightning into swords during their tribulation transcendence." Kong Mohan was astonished, but the thousands of students outside the immortal spirit tower weren't all that surprised. With Enlin's lightning Kirin in the past, It didn't make sense for a sword tribulation lightning to appear now. However, the sight of tens of thousands of swords submitting to Lu Qianhuan gave them quite a fright. Lu Qianhuan slowly rose to her feet, and her body was like an unsheathed divine sword. Lu Qianhuan slowly stood up, and her body was like an unsheathed divine sword, radiating a formless aura that no one could look directly at. She raised her head, and it was as if she could see through the immortal spirit tower to the lightning sword hanging in the sky. Whoosh! The lightning sword sprang into action, leaving a dazzling trail in its wake. It was as if a lightning dragon were tearing through the heavens as it flew toward Lu Qianhuan under Enlin's guidance. Boom! The lightning sword instantly punctured Enlin's chest amid a flash of dazzling light. Heaven and earth instantly fell deathly silent. Only the thunderous roar of a dragon could be heard, as well as the man who had been punctured by the lightning sword. Chapter 602. Enlin stared at the lightning sword in his chest with incredulity on his face. The lightning sword was imbued with peerless sharpness, and devastating lightning might spread throughout his entire body as destructive power proliferated outward. Did his lightning manipulation technique fail? No. It should be said that he didn't react in time. No matter where the divine lightning of tribulation lightning was drawn to, it would always be directed toward the person transcending the tribulation. However, right when the lightning sword was drawn toward the 91st level, it suddenly changed its target and stabbed toward Enlin. Everything had happened far too quickly, and Enlin was caught off guard and fell prey to the attack. Why did it strike me instead of Lu Qianhuan? It's not like I'm the one transcending the tribulation. Enlin was completely dumbstruck. Could it be that the divine lightning felt like its dignity had been challenged by his constant use of the lightning manipulation technique and decided to attack him? That didn't make any sense. If the divine lightning really was this emotional, he would have been struck countless times already. Enlin! Su Xiaolan let loose a cry of surprise at the sight of Enlin being struck by the lightning sword before immediately flying toward him. Su Qianyun followed closely behind Su Xiaolan. Even Xianyuan Cheng and Tang Shiman's expressions shifted drastically as they flew toward Enlin. "Don't come any closer. I'm fine, get away from me," Enlin yelled in a loud voice. Everyone faltered upon hearing this. Only then did they notice that even though the lightning sword had punctured Enlin's skin, there didn't seem to be any serious injuries aside from a hole in his clothes and some charred skin. "Are you really fine?" Su Xiaolan was a little concerned. "I'm fine." Enlin shook his head. "Aside from a little numbness, I'm really fine." He extended his hands and crushed the lightning sword in his chest as he spoke. Gasp! Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. He could even withstand tribulation lightning for someone else without getting injured. How terrifying! Lu Qianhuan turned to look at Enlin, and a hint of emotion flashed through her indifferent eyes. She began to understand why the Thunder Trial had turned to Enlin. It had used the sword to violently cut off all obsessions, not only about her mother, but also about Enlin and the others. In particular, when Enlin was standing right before her, the lightning tribulation sword was even more severely affected by his presence. The lightning tribulation was the key to breaking through to the next realm. Naturally, it would eliminate all obstacles that would affect the breakthrough. What to do? Lu Qianhuan suddenly discovered that it wasn't that easy to part with these things. She still couldn't forget her mother. She couldn't forget Enlin and her friends. Perhaps, when the last bolt of lightning fell, she would be able to sever all her obsessions with the power of the heavenly tribulation. But for some reason she was afraid. When she really had to face it, she had the thought of retreating. Rumble! The 42nd lightning bolt fell. The lightning sword lit up the sky. This time, Enlin was completely focused on using the lightning manipulation technique and didn't slack off in the slightest. The lightning sword was guided around the top of the pagoda. Sure enough, when it got close to him, the lightning sword suddenly changed direction and stabbed at him. Enlin was already prepared, and he immediately adjusted his direction. Whoosh! The lightning sword was forcibly guided toward Lu Qianhuan. Lu Qianhuan was in the middle of activating her sword mantra, and the projection of an ancient sword enshrouded her entire body. The lightning sword crashed into her body and transformed into countless tiny arcs of lightning. The sword intent imbued with the heavenly Tao flowed through her body, bringing with it not only destruction, but also creation. Success. A gratified smile appeared on Enlin's face. During a tribulation transcendence, absorbing the power of tribulation lightning was the most important step. Only by being reborn from destruction could one step onto the peerless Tao. If it weren't for this, Enlin would have blocked all of the tribulation lightning for Lu Qianhuan a long time ago. Boom, 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 bolts of lightning fell one after another, and Lu Qianhuan's aura became more and more powerful. Following the awakening of her ancient sword Tao physique, her sword intent became boundlessly sharp and pierced through the heavens. Some of the students with lower cultivation bases felt their Tao hearts waver at the sight of this sword intent soaring into the sky. They even felt the urge to kneel down and worship her. After the 48th bolt of tribulation lightning fell, the rumbling of thunder in the sky had already died down. Enlin looked up at the sky with a solemn and expectant expression. This was the last bolt of tribulation lightning, an extremely terrifying power was accumulating, and the boundless sword intent tore the clouds in the sky in half. A white lightning sword tore through the heavens and descended upon the world. The lightning sword was over 100 feet long, and it was extremely dazzling, bathing the entire heaven and earth in a vast expanse of white. The energy imbued within the sword was extremely terrifying, and everyone felt a suffocating sense of oppression. Crack, crack. The space around the lightning sword seemed to be unable to withstand such terrifying power, and black cracks began to appear. This tribulation lightning is so powerful. Enlin stared up at the lightning sword in the sky with astonishment on his face. Even his body of the war god would most likely be wounded by this lightning strike, and Lu Qianhuan might not be able to withstand it. No, she definitely wouldn't be able to withstand it. Furthermore, for some reason, using the lightning manipulation technique to control Lu Qianhuan's tribulation lightning wasn't as easy as controlling his own tribulation lightning. He could only control its direction, but he couldn't control its speed or its explosive power. This meant that its power would instantly engulf Lu Qianhuan. Kong Mohan also realized this, and his expression shifted drastically. No, the power of this tribulation lightning is far too terrifying. She won't be able to withstand it. Is it because the immortal spirit tower was able to withstand the tribulation lightning? Bai Zhong's expression was filled with disappointment, but he didn't know what to do. In the distance, the celestial Dharch also shook his head and heaved a forlorn sigh. It's not just because of the immortal spirit tower. The more supremely talented a being is, the more terrifying their tribulation lightning will be. Lu Qianhuan has awakened her ancient sword Tao physique, and her aptitude is astonishing, so it's only natural that her tribulation lightning would be terrifying. However, her foundation has yet to be perfected, and she has yet to completely let go of her obsession. Now that she's trying to use the power of the tribulation lightning to sever her obsession, this will only make the tribulation lightning even more fearsome. She's most likely going to die here. The celestial Dharch shook his head and sighed. If this were the initial stage of the tribulation lightning, he could still forcibly disperse the tribulation clouds and save Lu Qianhuan's life. However, the tribulation lightning had already reached its final stage, and even he couldn't interfere. Otherwise, he would suffer backlash from the heavenly Tao. Everyone else also wore nervous expressions on their faces. No matter how inexperienced they were all well aware of just how terrifying this tribulation lightning was. It didn't seem to be something that a human could withstand. Lu Qianhuan's features turned deathly pale as she sensed the terrifying power of the tribulation lightning. She thought back to her past. She loved her mother so much, and she had so many friends that she cherished, So why did she have to sever all of these emotions? One wrong step led to many wrong steps. Lu Qianhuan realized where she had gone wrong. She wasn't prepared to sever all of these emotions. She wasn't even prepared for this, so how could the tribulation lightning help her? Gale force winds howled as dark clouds surged. A white lightning sword hung high in the sky. Lu Qianhuan's body was no longer tall and straight. Instead, she was like a willow branch that was about to fall over. 2 streams of tears flowed down her beautiful cheeks, but she was completely unaware of them. She knew that she could also fear death, and she could also feel regret and reluctance. Boom! The white lightning sword was like a divine punishment as it descended from the heavens, creating the most dazzling light between heaven and earth. Lu Qianhuan raised her head to look out the window to find a terrifying energy approaching through the air. Her purple eyes were a little dull, but she caught sight of a man smiling at her with a determined and warm expression on his face. The lightning sword fell, but it pierced through the man's chest. Lu Qianhuan's lips parted slightly. In the end, she was unable to repress her emotions any longer, and an urgent cry escaped her lips. Unlin! Chapter 603. A dazzling white lightning sword imbued with boundless sword intent and the power to destroy space punctured Enlin's body. This was the only way that Enlin could think of to ensure Lu Qianhuan's survival. Previously, a bolt of tribulation lightning had struck his body before being pulverized by him. Thus, he could do the same thing this time and shift the target of the tribulation lightning to himself. It was quite clear that he had succeeded. The white lightning sword had successfully punctured his body, and the destructive power charred Enlin's chest black as he threw up a mouthful of blood. Enlin! Lu Qianhuan yelled. She tried to approach Enlin, but to her surprise, a burst of mighty power of heaven and earth suddenly descended upon her. Lu Qianhuan felt as if the paramount power had struck her body, and her body was instantly severely wounded as she threw up a mouthful of blood. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Enlin took a deep breath, and the power of his body of the war god was completely activated as his powerful body resisted and digested the terrifying lightning sword. At the same time, a burst of pure yang power imbued with peerless sword intent began to slowly flow into Enlin's sea of vital energy due to the suppression of his body of the war god. And Kiran raised his head to look up into the sky to find that white lightning had filled the entire sea of vital energy. Even the white vermilion bird had fled in fear. However, he fearlessly leaped into the air and opened his mouth with excitement as he pounced toward the boundless white lightning in his sea of vital energy. Clatter, clatter, and Kiran devoured the power of the white lightning sword to his heart's content within Enlin's sea of vital energy. At the same time, the massive lightning sword embedded in Enlin's chest began to shrink, and its power also began to wane. In the end, it was unable to hold on any longer, and began to disintegrate into countless bolts of white lightning that enshrouded Enlin's entire body. Bai Zhong, Kong Mohan, Lu Qianhuan, and the thousands of students were all dumbstruck. Even the celestial Dharch swallowed involuntarily. They saw an expression of bliss on Enlin's face. That's right. Other than the painful expression on his face when he was struck by the sword, when he recovered and absorbed the power of the heavenly lightning, Enlin began to narrow his eyes. His body trembled slightly, and the corners of his mouth curled up faintly. He actually revealed a happy smile. Is Enlin enjoying himself? I think so. Could it be that you can laugh when you're in pain? I will. Hey bro, you seem to have exposed something. As expected of the tamer of divine lightning. Only a man as ferocious as him would be able to manipulate and control divine lightning and reap bliss from its attacks. Does it feel good to be struck by lightning? I want to try too. The students looked at the man in the sky with awe and fanaticism. This scene would probably become one of the most profound memories of their school life. When Su Xiaolan saw this, she looked at Enlin with a complicated expression. She thought to herself, is he into this kind of thing? The dark clouds in the sky slowly dissipated, and a bright and beautiful light shone down from above, giving everyone a sense of relief. Enlin had also completely dispelled the lightning sword, and a white lightning cloak appeared around Kirin's body. A powerful sword intent surged through the air, and the little whale trembled uncontrollably in fear. What the hell is a cloak? Could it be that a cloak was equivalent to a set of clothes? Enlin was ecstatic upon seeing this. His condition for progressing to the soul formation final stage was to give Kirin a set of clothes, so a cloak counted as a set of clothes, right? He looked toward his system with an impatient expression, only to find that the system was completely dark and did not indicate that the mission had been completed. Enlin was quite disappointed. That didn't count. Boom. His sea of vital energy suddenly tremored. Immediately afterward, Kirin gave him some kind of feedback that improved his understanding of the Tao of Lightning. This feedback was related to the sword intent of lightning. To put it in simpler terms, he could now use the power of that white lightning sword. A smile blossomed on Lu Qianhuan's face upon seeing that Enlin was safe and sound. Her bright purple eyes regained their usual luster, making her appear even more alluring. Kacha! A crisp sound rang out. A crack suddenly appeared on the ancient sword silhouette that enveloped her. Pfff! Lu Qianhuan spat out a mouthful of blood. Enlin's expression changed as he yelled, "Lu Qianhuan, are you all right?" Kong Mohan, who was also a top-rate sword cultivator, seemed to have thought of something upon seeing Lu Qianhuan's state, and a grave expression appeared on his face. Crap! Her thunder tribulations were few, and her sword Tao insight had not been tempered by the thunder tribulations, so it was lacking. In other words, if she's unable to take advantage of this lightning tribulation to polish her sword Tao to perfection, then it'll be very difficult for her cultivation to improve in the future. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. They raised their heads and looked at the sky. The dark clouds had already dispersed. Where was the lightning tribulation? Could it be that this tribulation was destined to be a pity? Lu Qianhuan's expression was poignant, and the 2 tear stains on her face evoked a sense of pity in everyone's hearts. However, a carefree smile appeared on her face upon hearing Kong Mohan's words, and she replied in a cheerful voice, "It's all right, it's already a blessing that I'm still alive. I've already refined my soul formation stage body, and I still have over 10,000 years of lifespan left. What's there to be afraid of?" Kacha! Countless cracks appeared on the ancient sword silhouette, and its bronze glow gradually dimmed. The once peerless sword intent was like a castle in the air, on the verge of collapse at any moment. Everyone felt their hearts wrench in their throats upon seeing this, and some of them couldn't even bear to watch. Enlin clenched his fists with an expression of indignation on his face. He suddenly seemed to have thought of something, and he took a deep breath before making another motion with his finger. Kacha! White lightning appeared in the air once again, and it was imbued with boundless sword intent. This was a sense of déjà vu. Lu Qianhuan turned toward Enlin, and she was completely rooted to the spot. Not only her, but everyone also turned to look at Enlin with shock, confusion, and excitement in their eyes. "Are you willing to trust me?" Enlin asked. Lu Qianhuan nodded with a dainty smile. "Yes." "Then why don't we give it a try?" Enlin waved a hand, and white lightning materialized into a lightning sword from which supreme sword intent surged forth. "All right, I'll do as you say." Lu Qianhuan didn't know why, but she had absolute trust in the man before her. It was as if this man was worthy of her trust, and this gave her a peculiar sense of security. Boom! The white lightning sword stabbed toward Lu Qianhuan. Lu Qianhuan activated her cultivation technique, and the sword intent around her body surged again. Boom! Lightning exploded, and the cracks on the ancient sword silhouette began to slowly mend. Everyone's heart jolted, and they almost yelled in excitement. It worked! The power that Enlin had unleashed this time came from Lu Qianhuan's heavenly tribulation, so the power of this lightning sword was extremely compatible with Lu Qianhuan. The fact that it could unleash the same effect as the tribulation lightning was quite surprising. But it's not enough. Enlin manipulated lightning again, and another white lightning sword stabbed toward Lu Qianhuan. Boom boom boom! Bolts of lightning exploded, and Lu Qianhuan's sword intent was gradually perfected. In the end, Lu Qianhuan's sword intent soared into the heavens before everyone's eyes. A sword intent that seemed to have come from a great transcendence resonated with all the swords in the world. This time, it wasn't submission. Instead, it was the power of all the swords to follow Lu Qianhuan. Lu Qianhuan stepped lightly, and with each step, she stepped onto an extremely tiny projection of a celestial sword. Her body became a sword, everything became a sword, heaven and earth became a sword. The air she stepped on could also become a sword. Kong Mohan's body trembled with excitement. A true peerless sword immortal has finally been born. Lu Qianhuan stepped through the air and arrived before Enlin. The sharpness in her purple eyes had completely faded, and only her beautiful eyes remained. A light breeze blew past, and her long hair danced in the wind, tugging at one's heartstrings. "Thank you, Enlin. Senior sister will reward you with a hug." She didn't wait for Enlin to speak before giving him a teasing smile. She then walked over to him and embraced him tightly. Enlin felt a fragrant scent waft past him, immediately following which a warm and soft body was pressed into his arms. He stood rooted to the spot, but he could still feel the scorching heat from her body as well as the hands that were wrapped tightly around his back. The man who had once needed her protection was now someone she could rely on. Lu Qianhuan closed her eyes and savored the sensation for a while before slowly releasing her arms and taking a few steps back. She looked at the still dazed Enlin and tilted her head to the side with a faint smile. Her smile was exquisitely beautiful, and it was tinged with the pride of a sword immortal as well as a hint of intimacy and charm. She spoke again, "Thank you." Enlin came to his senses and waved his hands. "No need to thank me, it's what I should do." Nearby, Su Xiaolan's lips twitched imperceptibly. Chapter 604. Lu Qianhuan had finally transcended her tribulation, and all of the spectators heaved a collective sigh of relief. This type of tribulation transcendence had stimulated their adrenal glands, and the excitement and satisfaction it brought them was no less than watching a spectacular battle. As for the hug at the end, no one thought much of it. Su Xiaolan felt a little strange upon seeing this. She really wanted to grab Enlin and give him a good beating. She really wanted to ask him if he had a good time hugging her. However, after thinking about it for a moment, she realized that it wouldn't be very appropriate for her to do something like that in front of everyone, so she repressed the urge to give Enlin a good beating. Classmate Enlin is so awesome. He can even execute tribulation lightning on behalf of the heavens. Does that mean I can also get Enlin to strike me with tribulation lightning, thereby allowing me to progress to the soul formation initial stage? Su Qianyun blinked her dreamy eyes as her imagination ran wild. Su Xiaolan replied with a resigned expression, "That clearly won't work. Enlin must have absorbed a portion of Lu Qianhuan's tribulation lightning, and that's why he's able to send his tribulation lightning back to Lu Qianhuan. But who knows? What if his tribulation lightning works? How will we know if we don't try?" Su Qianyun spoke in a mellow voice, but her expression was one of stubbornness. Su Xiaolan slapped a hand to her forehead and heaved a faint sigh. If this little girl insisted on being struck by tribulation lightning, then she couldn't do anything about it. Bai Zhong wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. This tribulation transcendence had given him a huge fright. One of the most talented students in the school had almost perished here. I almost made a huge mistake. Kong Mohan was the happiest person to see Lu Qianhuan transcend her tribulation safely. He was afraid that his reckless persuasion would result in the death of a supremely talented sword immortal. Thankfully, a man turned the tables and saved Lu Qianhuan. In any case, the final result was a positive one. A gratified smile appeared on Bai Zhong's face. This trial has come to a successful conclusion, he faltered as he spoke. Wait, what the f*ck is this over? All of the trial takers had run out of the pagoda, and it was a complete mess. All of a sudden, Bai Zhong felt extremely stifled and exhausted. Lu Qianhuan raised her slender eyebrows at Enlin. Then, she turned and walked toward the 91st level. She waved her slender hand in the air and said in a sweet voice, "Let's go, the trial isn't over yet." She made her way into the 91-level Immortal Spirit Tower as she spoke. Bai Zhong also played his role as the manager of the restricted area at this moment. All trial takers, please return to your original floors. The trial will continue. Enlin looked behind him and found that Su Xiaolan was also looking at him. A faint smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. Well done. Of course. Have you been conquered by my powerful and imposing figure? After being praised, Enlin couldn't help but gloat. Su Xiaolan's heart sank. Was this person really that insensitive? She couldn't help but sneer. Haha, just you wait when we get back. Huh? Enlin was dumbstruck, and a sense of foreboding welled up in his heart. All right, time for the trial. Su Xiaolan flew toward the 95th level atop her dragon sparrow sword with a disinterested expression. Hee, classmate Enlin, you have to help me transcend my tribulation in the future. Su Qianyun also waved goodbye with a sweet smile on her face. Help her transcend her tribulation? Enlin was a little dumbstruck, but they had already flown away, so he could only set this aside for now. He swallowed a blood spirit pill to replenish his energy before flying toward the 98th level. Speaking of which, his divine intent on that level took a very long time to materialize. He had waited for a long time, but it still hadn't materialized into a human form, so he didn't know if it had already materialized. As expected, the more badass a person was, the slower they would take to make an appearance. On the 91st level, Kong Mohan and Lu Qianhuan stood with their swords in their hand. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have tried to persuade you to sever your obsession to make a breakthrough. Kong Mohan bowed with an apologetic expression. A dainty smile appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face. No, that was my fault. However, I'm very glad that I made the choice I made. After all, the outcome was very good, wasn't it? This was a very good outcome. In the past, she had to sever her obsession in order to make a breakthrough, only to find that she was completely unable to do so. It was exactly because of Enlin's appearance that she was able to successfully make a breakthrough without giving up anything that was very precious to her. Perhaps her Tao heart would still be affected by her emotions, but it was still much better than a cold and emotionless sword immortal. Kong Mohan nodded with a relieved smile at the sight of Lu Qianhuan's powerful sword intent. Then, let's begin. All right. Lu Qianhuan waved her frosty longsword through the air, and a colorless domain of extreme frost instantly proliferated outward. Her body was like an unsheathed treasured sword, and the blue silk around her was like clouds and mist as it revolved around her delicate body. The terrifying sword intent emanating from her body caused the entire space around her to tremor uncontrollably. The vacuum extended all the way to Kong Mohan's body, and heaven and earth had already parted for her sword before it had even descended. Kong Mohan's pupils contracted upon seeing this, and he forcibly broke free from the domain of extreme frost before slashing a green sword projection toward Lu Qianhuan. Clang! A sound similar to jade colliding resounded. His green sword radiance was sliced in half by a blue afterimage. So fast, Kong Mohan hurriedly unleashed a movement technique to retreat at the sight of a figure charging toward him, only to find that his speed was becoming slower and slower, while the figure in front of him was becoming faster and faster. Domain of extreme frost. The closer the distance, the more powerful the spatial freezing power became. Whoosh! The sword projection descended with absolute frost sword intent, slicing Kong Mohan's body in half. Lu Qianhuan had already appeared behind Kong Mohan, and her blue and pink sailor dress fluttered in the wind as snowflakes danced in the air. She lowered her snowy white arm before twisting her wrist, and the frosty longsword in her hand transformed into a puddle of water that fell to the ground. She didn't even have to look at Kong Mohan behind her. How impressive! A gratified smile appeared on Kong Mohan's face as his body began to dissipate. I'm going to teach you the dripping sword technique now. Take this. A speck of green light fell into Lu Qianhuan's glabella. Lu Qianhuan stood silently. She possessed the ancient sword Dao physique, so she was able to quickly comprehend the true intent of the dripping sword technique. She bowed gratefully to Kong Mohan. Thank you, Senior. A satisfied smile appeared on Kong Mohan's face. It's your astonishing aptitude that makes me want to teach you everything I know. His body slowly dissipated, and his voice also became more and more feeble. In the end, he drifted away like a gust of wind. Bai Zhong appeared, and he looked at Lu Qianhuan with a forlorn expression before bringing out a bunch of badges. Lu Qianhuan, congratulations on passing the trial. You can choose another level now. Lu Qianhuan didn't even hesitate before picking up the number 97 badge. Bai Zhong faltered slightly upon seeing this. You've only just progressed to the soul formation initial stage. Why don't you reconsider? No matter how supremely talented you are, you still need time to improve. If you choose number 97, you really won't stand a chance. Heh! Old man, you didn't even have a chance against me on the 91st level. Lu Qianhuan chuckled. Bai Zhong was struck by another indescribable sense of frustration. Alright. Go ahead then. You won't be able to grow if you don't suffer some setbacks. Bai Zhong passed the number 97 to Lu Qianhuan. Strange, why did that sound so familiar? Bai Zhong's heart sank again. A faint smile appeared on Lu Qianhuan's face as she held the badge. Anlin was on the 98th level. She just wanted to get closer to him so that she wouldn't fall too far behind. Outside the Immortal Spirit Tower, several thousand students erupted into raucous cheers upon seeing Lu Qianhuan defeat Kong Mohan in such a short amount of time. Lu Qianhuan was the only fifth-year student representative left, so they naturally wanted her to do well. Do you guys think Lu Qianhuan will be able to break senior student Wang's record? There's still a chance. After all, Lu Qianhuan has already progressed to the soul formation stage. With her exceptional aptitude in the way of the sword, there really is a chance that she can pass the trial on the 93rd level. This, however, everyone was unable to react to the scenes unfolding on the screen before erupting into an uproar. My God! Lu Qianhuan chose the 97th level? How long has it been since anyone broke the record on the 97th level? It's probably been over 10,000 years, right? Sigh, she's still too impulsive. Wang Xuanzhan was extremely talented, but he was still defeated on the 93rd level. Isn't she just throwing her life away? Many students wore wistful expressions on their faces. They were hoping that Lu Qianhuan would be able to break the previous record, but who would have thought that Lu Qianhuan would choose the impossible level? The celestial Dharch clicked his tongue in wonder as he observed from the shadows. Anlin is indeed quite powerful, but he's a little too popular. No, I have to tell little Z to be more careful and not fall for him. Chapter 605. Su Qianyun defeated her opponent on the 83rd level and received the inheritance of the immortal wrath Fire Lotus. In fact, she was not picky about this kind of inheritance that did not match her style at all and accepted it without hesitation. Furthermore, the immortal was more than happy to give her the inheritance. There was no other reason than that she was simply too beautiful. It had been a long time since he had met such a beautiful woman, so he naturally had to take good care of her. Immediately afterward, Su Qianyun happily chose the 84th level. Bai Zhong felt like Su Qianyun was the most adorable among all of them. Not only was she extremely adorable, but her personality was also super adorable. She was super worry-free. As such, Bai Zhong was full of praise for Su Qianyun. Among all of the trial takers, Su Qianyun was the first to receive praise from him. As for Su Xiaolan, she was engaged in a tough battle on the 95th level. In the end, the enraged cry of a vermilion bird erupted into the heavens. The white holy vermilion flames instantly engulfed the 95th level. These flames were born from chaos, and they were imbued with the power to incinerate all things between heaven and earth, causing the space around them to twist and warp. The man with golden sigils all over his body unleashed a defensive spell technique as an indestructible golden dragon head projection enshrouded his entire body. Lightning snakes flashed under Su Xiaolan's feet, and her body pierced through the layers of flames like a sharp sword. She spread open her white wings, and she leaped into the air like a celestial maiden. An azure lightning dragon began to materialize into a divine sword exuding boundless dragon might, while a white vermilion bird materialized into a flaming long sword imbued with holy might. The two swords then combined as one, and an extremely fearsome energy fluctuation began to proliferate forth as a longsword imbued with the power of both the vermilion bird and the true dragon materialized in Su Xiaolan's hand. She wielded the dragon sparrow divine sword and slashed it down upon the dragon head projection barrier before her with devastating might. Boom! Flames and azure lightning exploded as an indescribable power swept through the entire space, almost breaking through the defensive spell formations around the immortal spirit tower and causing the entire tower to tremor violently. Su Xiaolan made her way toward the man within the sea of flames. Her features were a little pale, clearly having expended a lot of her energy to unleash that attack. The flames danced around her, making her appear as regal as a holy maiden of flames. Not far away from her, a terrible crack had appeared on the illusory golden dragon head of the heaven immortal. Blood flowed from his forehead, and his aura grew weaker and weaker. I never thought that I would encounter a wondrous woman who possesses both the bloodline of the vermilion bird and the bloodline of the true dragon. Looks like waiting here for over 1,000 years was worth it, said the man with a smile. A golden rune flashed in his hand. This is the power of the dragon rune. Are you interested? Su Xiaolan bowed with a smile. I really like this power. Thank you for giving it to me, senior. Meanwhile, several thousand students outside the Immortal Spirit Tower were completely dumbfounded. God! She defeated a celestial immortal on the 95th level? I thought she was just like the other soul formation stage prodigies. I didn't expect her to break the school's unbroken record for 1,000 years. That last sword slash was too terrifying. I felt my heart palpitate just by watching it. That was the power that was weakened by 100 times. If it was the full power, how strong would it be? Amidst the exclamations of the students, some of them turned their gazes elsewhere. Su Xiaolan has already passed level 95. Do you think Goddess Lu will be able to pass level 97? It's very difficult. Lu Qianhuan had only just reached the soul formation stage, so she hadn't accumulated much experience yet. Back then, True Lord Erlang had passed the 97th level as a soul formation intermediate stage cultivator, only to be stopped at the 98th level. That was already the highest record since the founding of the school. Lu Qianhuan has only just entered the soul formation stage, so she can't possibly compare to the god of war of the celestial court back in the day, can she? Among this group of students, Tang Shiman looked enviously at his friends in the upper echelons of the university. Previously, his goal was to pass the 80th floor and enter the University Hall of Fame. Now, these friends were already rushing to break the record. Why did he feel that his great dream had become a salted fish again? Bai Zhong felt a burning sensation on his face when he saw Su Xiaolan pass the 95th checkpoint. It took him a long time to calm his emotions before he appeared in front of Su Xiaolan again and took out a bunch of number tags. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly as she glanced at the number tags. Where's the number tag for the 97th level? It was taken by classmate Lu Qianhuan, Bai Zhong replied. A thoughtful expression appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. After a moment of silence, a faint smile appeared on her face. Then I'll take the 96th level. Bai Zhong nodded and handed over his number tag. He didn't want to say anything else now in case he got slapped in the face again. Meanwhile, on the 98th level, Enlin stared at the slowly materializing celestial immortal before him, and his entire body trembled involuntarily as he sensed the vast power surging within it. The aura exuded by this cultivation base was so powerful. This was the aura of a mighty figure at the pinnacle of the Return to Void final stage. This meant that the celestial immortal before him was most likely a Return to Void stage mighty figure, who was already preparing for the Tao integration stage. Enlin felt as if he were facing the Dark Knight monarch and palace leader Qingli, and he was struck by a sense of oppression from the power of the divine Tao. He took a deep breath as he stared at his opponent with a scorching light in his eyes. The celestial immortal's body finally materialized, and an even more terrifying aura threatened to crush the space around him. He wore an elegant hat and a broad robe, and his eyes were as deep and tranquil as a lake. Black rings of wind revolved around his wrists, and his crimson eyes seemed to be imbued with the power of destruction. The most obvious thing about him was that his feet had left the ground, and he was standing on a vast expanse of darkness. The darkness looked like a round puddle of black water at first glance, but as Enlin looked at it intently, the darkness grew larger and larger until it was like an abyss that was capable of sucking in all things, engulfing the entire heaven and earth. This was a power imbued with boundless darkness, striking fear into one's heart and making one feel as if they were about to fall into a bottomless abyss. Human, the celestial immortal suddenly spoke in a voice that was pleasing to the ear. What kind of opening was this? Enlin blinked in confusion, but he still extended a respectful salute. Junior Enlin pays his respects to Senior. Do you know who I am? The celestial immortal stared at Enlin with an abyssal gaze. Enlin's heart jolted, but he still replied honestly, I don't know. You don't even know who I am. Who gave you the courage to challenge me? The celestial immortal harumphed coldly as a bone-chilling aura emanated from his body. Enlin was just about to speak when the celestial immortal spoke first. My name is Xing Tian, and I am the most powerful war god of the ancient celestial court. I once guarded the sinister spirit beast cesspool, and I have slain over 100 million savage beasts. I have even slain over a dozen Return to Void stage savage beasts with my own hands. Enlin was given a fright upon hearing this. Wasn't Xing Tian a monster with eyes on his chest and a mouth on his belly button? How could he be so handsome? He was completely different. Senior Xing Tian, Enlin joined his fists in salute and was just about to speak. Don't speak. Let me speak. Xing Tian waved a hand and cut off Enlin's words. Enlin. Chapter 606. Xing Tian clasped his hands behind his back and stood tall and straight, giving him the demeanor of a powerful cultivator. There are two types of people who have come here. The first type are those who admire me and want to see my face. They know that they will fail, but they still want to come here like moths flying into a flame. I will naturally let these talented youths return happily. The second type are those who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They hold on to a sliver of hope that they can defeat me, but they never thought that I, the war god Xing Tian, have never been defeated in my life. These people can only return in defeat in the end, without exception. Enlin couldn't help but ask, then Senior, you've never been defeated before, so how did you die? Xing Tian choked on his words, and his heroic aura also faltered. Why do you have so much to say? Enlin's lips twitched slightly as he grumbled internally, Big brother, you've always been the one with too much to say. I couldn't even get a word in before. Xing Tian then seemed to have detected Enlin's disdainful expression, and he immediately replied, I've never been defeated in battle. That is the truth. As for why I died, it was because I lost to fate. Unlin. Alright, alright, alright. You're the big boss, so you're always right. You've even said that you lost to fate. You might as well not have said anything at all. What? You don't believe me? Xing Tian sighed as ripples appeared in his deep eyes. A look of reminiscence appeared on his face. Fine. I'll tell you, senior, should we still fight? Don't interrupt. Listen to me. Unlin. Back then, Emperor Chang Sheng of the Southern Celestial Court sent me to the southern part of the continent to exterminate the ant tribe in order to expand the territory of the Kingdom of the Nine States. I did succeed and drove the entire ant tribe to the southern part of the Abyss of Evil. Then, I signed a contract with the Celestial Court to guard the demons of hell for the Celestial Court. However, when I went to the Ant Clan's continent to inspect the operation of the formation, I was ambushed by the 10,000 god-devouring ants formation jointly set up by 18 ant monarchs. In that battle, I killed over 1 billion ants, including 10 ant queens. In the end, I died of exhaustion. Xing Tian spoke slowly. When Enlin heard this, he felt even more respect for the ant tribe. This kind of death could be considered heroic, so his attitude toward Xing Tian became much better. Then, senior, aren't the ant tribe afraid of the Celestial Court's retaliation for publicly breaking the agreement? A melancholy expression appeared on Xing Tian's face, and he was just about to speak when he suddenly glared at Enlin. Don't interrupt, listen to me. Enlin. Enlin's favorability value decreased by 998. There was no way to continue this conversation. Didn't Xing Tian need others to agree or communicate with him? Was he reciting from a book? Xing Tian heaved a faint sigh. The ant tribe really isn't afraid of the Celestial Court's revenge. I've underestimated the ant tribe's determination to take revenge. Even if they lose the battle, they're going to retaliate and kill me, the leader of the southern invasion. Although I died of exhaustion back then, I still managed to escape from the 10,000 ants devouring formation with a strand of my broken soul and reported the news to the Heavenly Court. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the chance to speak with you here. Emperor Chang Sheng was enraged when he heard this news, and he led 100,000 heavenly soldiers to wipe out the ant tribe again, almost wiping them out. However, Emperor Chang Sheng didn't kill all of the ant tribe in the end. Otherwise, the Kingdom of the Nine States would have to face the invasion of the demons of hell. At that time, even more of our people would have perished. I have to say, the ant tribe's reproductive abilities are truly powerful. The scale of their population has already exceeded that of the past. I heard that they're trying to raise a new king. Dream on. However, all of the other tribes have been acting up recently. Regardless of whether it's the ant tribe, the snow maidens, or even the dragon court of the eastern seas, they seem to be plotting something. All of them are targeting the human race, so you have to be careful. Enlin was a little perplexed. Senior, how do you know so much about all of this? I told you to keep your mouth shut. Listen to me. Xing Tian's brows furrowed in a threatening manner. Enlin didn't want to continue this conversation. He wanted to fight. How do I know all of this? You probably don't know my status in the Celestial Court. Even after my death, there are still many immortals who come to converse with me. In the ancient Celestial Court, I was hailed as the immortal with the highest chance of successfully progressing to the Tao integration stage after the 5 emperors. I have reached the pinnacle in both the Tao of Abyss and the Tao of Slaughter. Sigh. It's a pity that I still lost to fate. Xing Tian shook his head and sighed with emotion. Enlin wanted to say something, but he had only just opened his mouth when Xing Tian immediately glared at him. It was as if he was telling him to keep his mouth shut. Listen to me. Enlin, it was so uncomfortable. What was the point of communicating like this? I know you're very curious about me. No. I'm not curious at all, really. You're very curious about why I'm so powerful. After all, you're the second type of person. You don't know how powerful I am, but you still want to challenge me and defeat me. You're the arrogant type, Xing Tian said in a slow voice. Enlin's lips twitched, but Xing Tian continued. Do you know who I've defeated? The Dark Wing Tribe's Red Knight Monarch, the sinister spirit beast Cesspool's Divine Bat Emperor, the chaotic skeleton monarch of the White Bone Realm. Xing Tian was happily recounting his glorious past when he turned to look at Enlin out of the corner of his eye, only to find that Enlin was listening to him with a dark expression and his brows furrowed. What? You don't seem to like it? Are you unhappy with what I've said, or do you think I'm just bragging? No. I'm just thinking, why is Senior Xing Tian telling me all of this? Enlin forced a smile. Heh. It's to show you how powerful I am, of course. Xing Tian spoke with a cold expression, but his expression was a little arrogant. Enlin's chest constricted and he clenched his fist. A confident smile appeared on Xing Tian's face as he asked, Then, please tell me the truth. Are you afraid of battling me? Do you regret it? Enlin's flesh crawled upon hearing this. Holy F***ck. So you're F***king telling me all of this just to show me how powerful you are? I'm afraid and I regret it. Enlin replied expressionlessly. A satisfied smile appeared on Xing Tian's face, and he was just about to speak when another stern voice sounded. Don't interrupt. Listen to me. Enlin spoke with a solemn expression. Xing Tian's expression faltered, and he was a little dumbstruck. Did something go wrong? Something felt off. I'm afraid of your endless bragging, and I regret wasting so much time listening to your **t. Enlin continued. Xing Tian was enraged upon hearing this. So, let's talk with our fists. Enlin stepped forward, and his battle intent surged like an ocean as the power of his body of the war god surged forth. Boom! Xing Tian was suddenly no longer enraged by Enlin's overwhelming battle intent, and he chortled with glee. All right, let's talk with our fists. I'll show you what it means to be the war god of the celestial court and an invincible legend.